Great. So this is our CST team. For those on my team, if you are presenting anything, please just introduce yourself at that time. Purpose of this session is a design session, and we will review and confirm Cerner build options that will be used to meet the clinic's identified requirements in preparation for validation. Just a quick reminder that our guiding principle is on enterprise design. We are configuring this build for enterprise for all of the health organizations. So we're supporting the health organizations with the establishment of common clinical and process standards and workflows, order sets, clinical guidelines, integrated plans of care, while using a common electronic health record. And with our guiding principle, we lean on these must-haves: safety, regulatory, financial, and content. There will be a lot of lingo, Cerner applications and so forth that will be discussed or used during the session. So please, if there is something that you're not too sure about, please ask for clarification, and we're happy to do so. So we'll start off with the prescription power form discussion, and we have Yami and Sunny here from our ambulatory team that will lead us through this discussion. I will caveat that there was an email that was sent out with some of the responses from your current initiation orders. So that will be the foundation for this portion here. Okay, take it away, Yami.
Hi, I'm Yami Messer, and I'm actually filling in for James today. And now I just want to go over the HD prescription power form for you, the home dialysis one. The Excel spreadsheet that Maritza was talking about, I'm going to go ahead and present it. So I just want to share with you guys what we had. Okay, and we're going to go to this one. Yes, share. Uh-oh, I need to make sure I can share my screen. Hold on one second. Why can't I share my screen? Hold on one second. Okay, hopefully this will work now. Sorry, I think I got it. Okay. Oh my goodness. For some reason, my computer does not like. Oh, here we go. Okay. Yay, I found it. Okay, hold on one second. Got it. Okay. Okay, it booted me out, but now I'm back. Okay. All right. Now I got it. Desktop 2. There we go. Okay. Can everybody see it now?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is the original spreadsheet that James had sent for feedback to go ahead. We did get approval to create the power form for the home dialysis prescription. So these would be the fields that would equate to that in that power form. So I just want to make sure that what we have here is what will meet the needs for you guys. And then also I did have the comments that Marissa did send back from one of the providers. So I put them in here, and if we need to change anything, we definitely can. And then we'll submit this to go ahead and get built. And so just to go over the NX, so these are the two machines, right? The AK96 and the NX. It's just the two. Just want to make sure we don't have, I'm missing anything.
It's just the two for now, but obviously that will change over time.
Okay, yeah, okay. So
there should be a way to have some other, like other or something.
Yeah, whenever, if we have to add in new ones or you have another machine, we would just then, you would submit a change request and we would add those fields in. So it's easy to build on this power form once we have it built. Okay, so for the actual fields themselves, this is what the field would be. It's a free text. And then whether it's required or not, and whether it'll pull in the last charted value. So that's what these three columns are right here. So has everybody looked at this already, or is this?
Yeah, I mean, can you just clarify? So for vascular access, you would have to write free text what their access is?
No, this would be an alpha response that you pick from.
Okay. So just with the goal weight, it's okay.
Yeah. So where it says like free text, that would be this one's free text. This is an alpha response that you would pick from. This one would be free text. This is an alpha response that you pick from.
Yeah. So the vascular access location, like we have a drop down right now with our current, and it works, right? So I don't see why you can't do that.
Okay.
And then even for some of these other ones, I mean, obviously the VGH physicians are doing this. We're not doing this here, but with a lot of the stuff, we have like a number of options, because really even with the next stage, there'll be maybe 3 or 4 different options for dialyzers or cartridge or whatever. And then there's always an other where you can free text, right? Okay.
So do you want to utilize the dialyzer, the options is this from a power form? I mean, a paper form right now?
Yeah, it's from a paper form.
Okay, so do we want to utilize the options that are on that paper form as alpha responses and then an other with free text?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think, okay.
What Mercedes, what's currently being done in regular hemo?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're doing. And it works really well, right? Like you always have an other that you can add whatever you want. But
okay, as long as there's an other, right? Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The question I did have for this, what was this comment, the feedback? What does this mean? This
So what that means is that if you put in all 3 of those, it's possible to put in inconsistent numbers, because one is liters, one is liters per hour, and one is hours. So they're all interrelated, and you don't need all 3. If you put in 2, the third one is predetermined, but you could have all 3. And then the possibility is that someone can put in a mistake that's not actually, doesn't add up. Someone could say, I want 4 liters over 4 hours at 4 liters per hour. And you would say, well, that doesn't work. The math doesn't add up.
Okay.
So that was my comment, that I don't think all 3 need to be there, but we could leave all 3 in there as sort of a safety check so that the physician really means what they say they mean. Or we could just put 2 of them. I mean, again, this is purely for next stage. There's no other device that does this. So Sanit, what do you think about having all 3? You didn't see my email.
I probably did, but have completely forgotten it by now, Peter.
Can I ask you guys a question?
That was before the long weekend, I believe. Yeah.
Just because like if you just had the dialysate flow rate of liters per hour and then the hours as a like, would that is that enough?
I think Mercedes, sometimes the patients themselves may change the hours. So I think we need the treatment time.
So add the length.
Right.
Okay.
And the dialysate flow rate. And then obviously that will determine the total volume. So I get what Peter's saying, but you also have a question about which SAC, you have a question of which SAC is being used. So sometimes we might use like a 30-liter SAC, but the patient's only going to do 15 liters that run, right?
Yeah.
And that SAC will be used for 2 runs. So
would the prescription be 15 liters per treatment? That's what you're wanting them to do?
Yes. And then the treatment length might change, right? So that way the liters per hour will change.
And is
so
that
all 3? Yeah.
Do we want to put all 3 in though? Because again, there's a possibility that you'll put in something that's not consistent. Not that, I mean, the patient won't necessarily care. They'll just run for their 4 hours and they'll figure something
Well,
out.
I mean, there's an intrinsic problem here, right? Because what we're writing in here, patients can adjust at home.
Yep.
And we
So is
want them to without
is the
us
crucial
writing
thing
it
then
down.
is the crucial thing then for them to do the 15 liters, and it doesn't matter, you can leave
I
the
mean, the
rest up to
SAC
them.
is the crucial thing, right? Yeah.
But by SAC though, the SAC is the solutions. It's not the volume. I interpret that
Right.
order dialysate SAC
Okay.
as being
Yeah.
the chemistry,
Okay.
not the
Not the
volume.
volume.
But Emmy
Yeah.
or Max, I mean, do you want to weigh in on that? Is the SAC is not the volume, right? The SAC is the
The
chemistry.
SAC
You're
is,
right. The calcium, the bicarb, the potassium. Yeah.
the SAC is 60, but most of the time we use half of it for one treatment, so it's 30
Right.
liter.
So it's not a volume question for the SAC. So if
But
we,
Peter, when you guys write the prescription for next stage, isn't most of it based on the volume of the dialysate that you want them
yes,
to, right?
yeah,
So
we would
that's the
usually
crucial
say
thing.
use 30 liters over 4 hours.
Mhm,
Make up a
mhm,
60 liter SAC, use 30 liters today over 4 hours and 30 liters tomorrow over 4 hours.
mhm.
Yeah, most of the time when we do training, we do that.
Yeah.
So we
It's the
don't-
total volume. It's the total volume and the time. And
Yeah.
then the liters per hour is a function of that.
Exactly. We don't
Yeah.
usually make them specify the liters per hour. So we could leave
Okay.
that out.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we could leave out the liters per hour and just do total volume and time like we would for PD. Yeah, very
Mhm,
similar.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then you're removing the dialysate flow rate.
Mhm.
Dialysate flow rate, is that one of the,
Yeah, I just turned it red.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one can be
No, we
removed.
don't need
So
that.
volume is in liters and duration is in hours.
and
So just
duration.
to make sure though, we
Yeah.
understand that that's different for next stage and for the other dialyzers that the other machines that may be used.
Yeah,
We
yeah, this
still
is
need
just next
the
stage.
flow rate. Yeah.
Yeah, this is just next stage.
Okay.
You do have to specify the blood pump speed with the next stage, or no? Don't know this at all. They do
Uh,
change it, right? The patients change it, or?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
fairly narrow
Okay.
range.
Are we allowed a range in that blood pump speed?
Yes.
Okay.
Right now it's numeric.
Well,
It's
we're,
not a
but
range.
I mean, can we look at it like what we have currently for our thing? So right now we have two options in our dialysis prescription power form, right? One, which is that, run 250 for the first hour, 300 for the initiation. And then the rest, you just click it and then you write what you want. You write whatever you want.
Okay.
For the flow rate, but for
Okay.
blood pump
For the
speed.
blood pump speed. Yeah. So often I'll write
Yeah.
300 to 350.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. If we can do that, that's fine.
So a free text.
Yeah. I mean, just if you look at our power form, a lot of the stuff will be very similar.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then the other one, the other comment for the SAC solutions, this is right now is an alpha response, and then it said separate items for this one, the bath solutions. What do you mean by separate
Right.
orders, like separate line items, or is it okay to utilize the alpha responses?
So Mercedes, for conventional hemo.
Yeah.
You have multiple dialysate orders, right? You can order
Yes, multiple
potassium.
and an other, right?
So-
Yeah.
So for the AK96 machine, we need that. We need
Mhm,
the same dialysate options basically as for hemo.
mhm. Yeah, because I mean, if you look, we have like 4 or 5 options and then another. Right?
Okay, so the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just one difference, right? It's not bicarb. It's lactate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we would
But
utilize.
for-
the
So
same.
we need to have a lactate in there, which we
For the
wouldn't have.
AK?
with chemo.
For the AK? or
No,
for the-
no, sorry, for the.
Talking AK. No, we're
Oh,
talking
okay,
about the
sorry,
AK.
sorry. Okay,
Okay. So we would
So
utilize.
yeah, I
the
mean, just
alpha.
to clarify, yeah, it will be those drop downs or whatever you call them, those bullet thingies.
Yeah,
But it won't be the same numbers that we're currently using, because if it's a home, they'll
Right.
go at lower speeds. But just like having those different options,
yeah,
that they will tell us what the options are, and then other.
yep. So we would pull it from the form that we have and then the other for the free text. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, and then the other, are there any additional items that
So,
are glaring?
so for the dialysate SAC then, that, so Emmy or Max or Seed, can we just have a single line item for that? Because you're picking the chemistry of the SAC, you're picking between the 3 options that we have or whatever. right? A K3, a K4.
It's only
And a two, yeah.
SAC
There's only
There's only two SACs, right?
There's only two.
302
Yeah.
and 304.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So
sorry, there are actually three types of sacks right now.
Oh.
Two of them are K1s and one's a K2. The K1 has a lactate of 40 and
Lactate
45, and the
45.
K2 has a 45.
So three options. So we just need to have those three options available for the,
Okay.
that's for the next stage dialysate SAC. So
That's
there's-
just- yeah. So this
So
would
there'll
be
be-
the same thing. We would have the separate items.
The
and
drop
output
down, yeah.
boxes. Mhm.
Can I just also add that with your dialysate SAC for the NX stage, there's also sodium of 140 millimoles as well as calcium 1.5.
Okay.
but those are not modifiable, are they?
No, those are the
Um,
same in all three. It's the K, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, it's just the K that you can select between the three.
Right.
And the lactate.
Yeah.
So yeah, so if the sodium and calcium are not selectable, then they don't necessarily need to be there.
Okay. Well, we'll make them selectable. Then we'll also have the other, right, for free text, just in case. Okay. Similar to the HD. But with
This-
the items that you guys have.
So this is not going to be similar to HD, right? We're not choosing a variety of sodium values, a variety of potassium values, a variety of bicarb values, a variety of calcium values. We're not doing that.
You're
For
just
next
doing
stage.
one.
We're choosing a
We're
premix.
choosing, we have
Right.
one list to choose from.
Right. I'm meaning that it's going to be an alpha response, not similar to
Okay.
those options that were on there, but that's an
Okay.
alpha response you can choose
Yeah.
from. Okay.
All right, yeah.
Okay. And then anything else? This should be fairly easy for us to get built. Marissa, from a validation of the actual form itself, will there be another meeting or will we just send screenshots later?
We could do both. We have a
Okay.
validation session booked in the next few weeks.
Okay.
But if there's anything that we could send by email, that might just help with the fulsome discussion at their last validation session. And
We can definitely do that.
yeah,
We can, so I'll put in here, I'll get this loaded up on the JIRA, push it through triage so that we can go ahead and start it getting built and we'll have it ready and then send screenshots out and then we'll do like a final approval for validation. Okay. All right. Thank you all so much. This was not hard. James kind of set me up really well. So
can I
Okay.
just ask a clarifying question? Particularly for the AK, the dialysate solutions, there are specific units per element, like sodium is listed as 138 millimoles, potassium is a K2 BAS, calcium is 1.25 millimoles, and bicarb is 35 millimoles. Did you want those units included in the power form in addition to another field if you wanted to change or choose something else?
They're all.
It should be
millimole.
the same as is currently done in hemo.
Yeah, but even the K is millimoles.
Yeah.
They should all just,
So same verbiage as on the paper form.
That which is similar to what we
Yeah.
have in our current power form, right? The units is the same.
yeah.
Yeah, just Peter and Steve, just so you guys know, for our power form, that one of the problems that we had was if we wanted to add phosphate, and the way that they had ordered it was very different in terms of how I kind of remember the units, but we recently asked for a change. Maritza, I don't know if we ended up making that change or not yet.
Yeah, I remember Claire telling me that as well. yeah.
Yes, it was. Did we
Millimoles
make that
versus
change
milli
yet?
equivalents?
I think so. Yeah. So, or it was like,
Yeah.
yeah. Like we
Because
would,
we
we
did
would,
it in mills. We did it in
Yes.
mills. Of the,
we
yeah.
did it in
and that's
mils, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think from Cerner verbiage, they wanted it in millimoles.
But
So
we,
then-
oh, sorry,
and then
Wendy,
so-
go ahead.
Yeah, no, so we did send Jesse and Maritza our preferences where it'd be, because it's a phosphate additive, so that there will be radial dials for no additives or, in the mils with brackets, the millimoles, so that it be what we're used to from an ordering perspective, as well as having the millimoles available there too, so that it would fit under Cerner requirements. And then it was like, I think we settled on 4 radial dials at the end, with one of them being other, obviously, and one being no additives. So I don't know where that is in production right now, but we did send that information to Jesse and Maritza.
Yeah, and Dr. Kiai and Winnie, this is Jesse. So just to give a quick update on that. So we have kind of submitted those requests. So it's kind of in progress, and we're going to be bringing it up and discussing it in the next HD session, which is in about a week and a bit.
And I think since phosphate is certainly very relevant to the AK96, we'll definitely have that. And probably, I suspect, this, whatever you choose for HD will be translatable for the AK in terms of the amount, the units, whatever. It's going to be the same process.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just ask another
But we
question?
definitely need it. We need it
Yeah.
for home hemo because we use it much more than in center.
Yeah, that's why I thought I'd bring it up.
So
Just
it
in
needs to
regards-
be there. It needs to be there.
So I'm hearing we need to add phosphate for the AK.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Just another question to clarify for your dialysate temperatures for both the NX and the AK. Do you would you ever order it in a range, or would it just be a single value?
It would be a single value.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, it's Bev. I just wanted to know for the next stage, the anticoagulation, is it a typical dose, or because right now it's an alpha where you would have to enter a number, I guess, whereas we have selections for certain, usual doses that we would use. So is anticoagulation?
It's just a bolus, Bev. So yeah,
Is it 500 units, 550, 1,000? I mean, that's what is currently available for selection in the HD power form that Dr. Jones was alluding to.
Right. Well, it can be quite a bit higher than that for some of the patients. Like it can be 2,000, 2,500. So it tends to be a little bit higher than in conventional hemo.
Okay, so you want to leave it just as a number that you'll put in rather than a selection of choices?
I think so. Yeah, I think so for heparin, yeah.
And then how about the central venous catheter anticoagulation lock? Is that a usual thing that everyone is the same dose, or is it different?
It's the same catheters as for hemo and everything else.
Yeah,
so.
citrate or heparin, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want a selection to click on rather than having to enter it?
Yeah, that would be good. Just the same as the drop down is in center hemo. Yeah.
Yeah, we have it as a drop down.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to confirm you want the anti-coag as a free text, not as a drop down?
That's what,
Yes.
so you think that's probably the best?
Yeah, I
to
think
give
that's
us
probably
more-
the easiest. Yeah,
more
yeah.
Just so you guys know, like right now, what we have is a couple of drop downs, and it'll go up to 2,500, 1,500, and then another.
And so Max, for the next stage, what options do we really have? Because I know for in-center hemo, people often tend to order heparins that are not actually compatible with the latest machine. So what does the next stage actually allow?
So with the next stage, we give a bolus up to 3,000.
But
Depending
is
on
it
the patient.
any amount? Can you order 275? Like for in-center hemo, the minimum is 1,000, right? There's nothing below 1,000. So what about next stage? Can you go less than 1,000?
I've never done it.
Never done it, because only a bolus for 4 hours.
So basically, what happens is when they are doing conventional, they're ordered like 1,000 units, and then they go to the next stage. We kind of increase the loading dose or just a bolus by 500 or 1,000 and see how it goes, and then we adjust according to the dialyzer clearance on that one.
And the next stage allows increments of say 100 units. Like if you wanted to order
basically
1,200.
When you're giving heparin, you just do it manually. There's the next stage machine is not giving it.
Okay, so then yeah, I think free text, I guess, because you can enter, patient can enter kind of almost any amount they want. So I guess yeah, free text is good.
Yeah, we do the bolus through the needle or the catheter, so we don't enter it through the machine.
Okay, so it's not like the Fresenius. Okay.
Yeah.
But it sounds like Max was saying that it's always in units of 500 and it's never below 1,000. So it'd be good to at least have those options so that it's easier. It's just in our experience, especially for medication safety.
Is there something for no heparin though?
Yeah, there is an option for no heparin. Like I said, it's just for medication safety. We've commonly found when we've moved to Cerner that it's nice to have kind of like your 80-20, right? So if most of the times patients are doing minimum of 1,000, then to have that radial dial there and then maybe have a no heparin and then an other or something like that, just so that you guys will use it all the time. But for learners and things like that, it's always good as a starting point to prevent medication errors. That's what we've commonly seen, at least.
Okay, that's what we'll do is we'll leave it as the alpha responses with the common ones there, and then utilize other for free text options.
Okay,
and then
so 0, 1,000. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. This looks good. I know that we're on a timeline, so I'll go ahead and submit this, and we'll start getting this built out, and then send out the screenshots, and then review it at the final validation session.
I just want to make sure I see here that central venous anticoagulation lock is still alpha, but that should be the specific ones as well, right? Like there are specific ones for that.
Yeah. So it's alpha. Yeah. So you'll choose from them. Yeah. Alpha.
Okay. Perfect. Sorry. Just want to get clear.
No, it's okay. Okay. All right. Let me save this, and then I will stop sharing, and Maritza can take back over.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was just going to share. Can you guys see Power Chart right now? I have a HD prescription power form open. I thought it might be a good idea just to show this is what's currently built out for hemodialysis. So we have a number of different radio buttons. I think Dr. Jung mentioned the ease if you want common, responses to be available like at a click of a button versus like other, then you kind of have to free text something in. So is there a preference now that you've seen this, whether you want, your 80% like, options that you normally would write down to be available as something that you can just select? We could build it out this way.
That looks fine.
I think that's what they decided. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is that with this power form, the way it's built and designed for hemodialysis is that every kind of response item is a mandatory field, and it needs to be completed in order for all of that information to pull forward nicely into the component for end users to view the prescription. So that's just an added kind of workflow step. So in the event that there might not be something that you're going to order in this section here, you still have to put in an entry.
So then just, I'm just anticipating problems here. If there's no infusion, as often is the case in next stage, so you click none for heparin infusion, then what do you have to pick for heparin stop time? Do you have to pick?
You put none.
You put none. There's no stop time, but there's no infusion, and that's allowed.
Yeah. You
never stop the heparin that you're never infusing. Hooray, CST. Okay.
So this power form. This is what we'll actually be filling out. What we were looking at before was just the key elements, and then it would end up looking like this.
Yes, that's right.
And then reason for placing new HD treatment orders would just be a home dialysis or right? Because we wouldn't have all these options, right?
No, this is this is specifically for hemodialysis. So would you require a field in your home hemo prescriptions?
Or we didn't even have a reason for placing new treatment orders for you guys. Do you need something like that on yours?
The only thing that I'm thinking is that for the only, like, they wouldn't need something like this, but maybe an option to be able to say that they're going to do next stage, or then now they're going to flip to the AK, like an option for those two different things, right? Like, how with PD, there's an option of CAPD versus CPD, right? Yeah.
But like, let's say, if someone's switching and they started off doing, short daily and then switch to nocturnal, we'll be putting completely new orders in.
There's a mode option for that. There's the nocturnal HD in the mode option.
Oh yeah. Okay. But it would still be at home. Like, so sometimes the home dialysis patients come in center for a run. So I'm just trying to figure out what happens to their prescriptions at those times.
Would you change them now?
Well,
Yeah,
if
they came
someone's
in
doing
for-
next stage at home and they come into the in-center, they'll be on AK.
Or if they get admitted to hospital, they'll be on Fresenius.
Right, yeah. So I'm just wondering, like,
So if,
what
if
would
they-
happen? What would happen even if a patient came not necessarily as an inpatient, but like, you know, when they're training, and then they go home, and then they come back in for some reason and are with the training team in the community unit or wherever it's going to be in the future. So how does that work then?
It sounds like you're needing a field similar to this, where you might want to indicate in your prescription, perhaps, if they're doing training versus if they are doing their independent nocturnal dialysis. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? Just so that
Yeah. What do you think, Peter? I think we need.
Well,
a
I'm still
couple
not sure I
answers.
understand that box in the first place. So the reason for placing new HT treatment orders is that they are outpatient St. Paul's. Like, I don't understand why.
So
the
Peter, so
reason
I
is a
guess what would happen,
location.
like, for example, we use this power form, and let's say that patient is now being transferred to Richmond, right?
Yeah.
And Richmond's on Cerner. I'll go into this, and now I'll flip it into Richmond and redo whatever, change any of the others. And then when so that order is for the nurses to see that this is actually what they're supposed to use when they're now in the community, right?
But
For some
Mercedes-
reason, they need that.
But
Okay.
Mercedes, if a patient's like not moving locations, they're just a regular, outpatient at St. Paul's. Every time you go in and change a prescription, do you still have to fill in that box each time, or is it auto?
No.
It's auto-filled. Yeah,
Okay,
it stays
okay.
there. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'll tell you, like, for example, if the patient is outpatient to inpatient, then we do sometimes have to refill the whole thing, kind of thing, if they flip around.
Okay.
So
So
Yes.
do you guys need, I don't know if this will help, like, to know that they're in during training? I guess they're training as an outpatient? Is that what's happening?
yeah. Yeah.
Right. They'd be an outpatient at one of the units. Yeah.
Yeah, and then if they can change, you can change the prescription or the machines, because you'll have the ability to change their prescriptions, right?
Mhm.
From next
But-
stage or AK96.
In that
Um,
reason for changing the hemo orders, we should probably have a home option there, right?
Yeah, a home version,
Yes.
so you know what the prescription is at home versus
Yeah.
where they were training.
Because you don't have that in there now. So when patients, let's say who are on home dialysis come to in-center, you're having to do this, but there's no return to home, right? So there should be a home one there.
I think that's yeah.
If your patients need to come in center, then you would use this power form, right? Because basically they'll be on, the typical Fresenius machine, and this is the form that you would use.
Right.
Yes.
But then when they
Yes.
transition, let's say back to home after discharge, you want to be able to put a home one here, right?
Yes, that's right, but that would be on another power form, the home
Oh,
hemodialysis
right.
power form.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So would you have to
Okay.
stop this one or something, or what would
Yeah.
you do?
No,
You would-
it'll just
Just write a new
automatically
one.
flip. It would automatically flip in dialysis management. You would see all the changes
Yes.
consecutively of what's been happening with their dialysis prescription.
Exactly. So I just completed all of the fields in the form, so everything is now white from yellow. I'm just going to sign for it. And what you'll notice in this prescription component here is there will be a net new column to indicate a net new prescription. Sorry, you can see here.
Mhm.
And then if you needed to, if for whatever reason the patient was on home hemo and they transitioned to conventional HD, you would then select from here a net new prescription. And then there's the hemodialysis one, and we're building out 2 new ones for home hemo, one for NX stage and one for AK, and you'll be able to access it here.
Okay, that looks
Yeah.
like that should work.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just have one question on this field right now. Right now, if I'm looking at this field, I can't tell, oh, I can see the location up in the corner. Okay, just wanted to check. Okay, thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Can I ask, do we need on the power form then, similar to the hemodialysis prescription, do we need to differentiate that it's home hemo VGH and then home hemo SPH?
Yep.
That's a
Yes.
good point. So
Yeah.
So it'll pretty much be similar to this reason for placing new HD treatment orders box, but the home hemo one will just be I'll just
Should we also have a nocturnal as well, because that's different from the nocturnal, or is it just where you have the
I don't think it
mode?
matters to me.
mode.
Sorry.
I think it'll be in the mode. So if
Okay.
it,
Okay.
we
Yeah.
choose VGH home hemo, then you would select nocturnal HD as the mode. Now, as here it says nocturnal HD. I know St. Paul's is dependent and VGH is independent. Do we need to differentiate that as well?
Well, it would only be in the home dialysis orders. Nocturnal presumably means nocturnal in independent. If you're writing them in the hemo orders, then nocturnal would have to mean dependent, wouldn't it?
Well, we have a mode DTA in the home in the AK and next stage power forms then, because then I think we'll need to include a mode section as well then. To Dr. Singh's point.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
the
I can.
HHD.
So
Yeah.
are you, so Flo, are you saying a
Well-
mode section needs to be included for both the NX and the AK?
Not the NO. The NX, does it really matter? I mean, you can't do in-center NX, next stage, nocturnal. So, but we may be writing orders like, for example, 8 hours, 6 days a week for 8 hours. Do we have to really specify that that's overnight versus daytime? The patient knows.
That's true. So
Does it matter?
then we might need 3 alphas in the reason for placing. One is VGH home, St. Paul's home, and then VGH in center nocturnal.
What about training? Did you guys need that too, or no?
I think you said that, Flo, training, right? Training or
VGH home and St. Paul's home include the training, like that.
Right.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
It's more respite.
Yeah.
It's just
Okay.
the location.
Just out of like, okay. But what if they're training, like I know this may change, but what if they're training in a community unit, like in the next little while?
If this is going to be live and they're still training in East Van, then we need to have training in East Van, like outpatient East Van.
The East wouldn't be going live with this. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I would still be on paper orders then.
Well, you have the other, so we can always have the other just in case. And then if it looks like we need to add another alpha response, we can, add that in there for easily select, but we do have the other still.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so I have it there. So do we need the mode for the AK 96?
Yes.
Every
Well,
time I say that.
They won't need it, yeah.
Okay, but not for the next
I think
stage.
it's fine to have other.
I don't
like,
think
you
for the
never
next
know what
stage
happens
we
in the
do
future,
know.
but
Okay, so I have that added now to the.
Because none of those apply to the next stage. Hemodiafiltrate, isolated urine.
Okay. Thank you, Maritza, for more clarification.
No problem. I just thought it might be easier to see the power form, just so that they could see the radio buttons and stuff. So
thank you.
Thank you. So we're good with that now, and then we can send screenshots for you to review, and then we could do a formal validation at our next session. Okay. All right. I did want to just transition over to the referral process currently used for home hemo as like a regional program. I think we wanted to highlight that the current workflow, VGH acts as a central intake. So this is information that we gathered from the initial requirements gathering session. There is the use of the promise wait list. The patients are entered in there and then prioritized based on referring provider's indication. The referrals are received via fax by your VGH clerk, then passed all over to the VGH home hemo nurse, which will then determine which pre-assessment clinic the patient will be booked to. And he or she would also then send referrals via fax or email to the receiving site. So in light of St. Paul's transitioning back from the community to the in-center, and we don't really have a definitive timeline on that, I just wanted to highlight that there will be some aspect of split activation in the interim. So with that, St. Paul's, any referrals coming from St. Paul's will still need to follow the current process of faxing it over to the VGH side for them to then follow your current workflow steps.
So Maritza, just we had a discussion about this recently. So this is like a work in process right now, right? So I don't like, I think that, you know, between now and when things move over from the community to here, then we'll have figured out what the process is going to be in terms of where the referral is going to go, right? So I think, I don't know, I just feel like this discussion is a bit premature right now because we have to figure out the process.
No, and I think I can kind of see where you're coming from, but it impacts how we build the referral order. I'm just going to jump to the next slide here. Just
but Maritza, do you remember when we had that discussion with Dr. Copeland was there too? We said that the form would have something. Bev, can you mute yourself? So basically what we said is that, and the referral would have like two check boxes. One would be referral to VGH, one would be referral to St. Paul's in case one of our patients wants to actually train over there, right? Isn't that what we sort of said?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we were obviously going through that and figuring out what that will look in the future state. So in the slide I have here, we have a prototype of what the referral to outpatient home hemodialysis order will look like. And then we'll look, yeah.
We're just seeing power chart. We don't see your.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
let me just share again. So sorry about that.
Maritza, it's Bev. I just, once it's the module has been created, I think it has to be available to both VGH and St. Paul's. I just do not like this idea of split activation.
I can understand that. It's just that with the project scope, they are building for VGH. And then with St. Paul's transitioning from the CDUs back to in-center, the original plan was to decide when we were going to go live with the home hemo program, because it was tied so closely with the CDU go lives, and that was not yet determined. So there was always some element of split activation that was going to be lived by the clinicians and end users at the two.
Okay, I'm not sure what you guys mean by split activation. Could somebody?
Me neither.
Well, Maritza is basically saying that St. Paul's will not have access to the home hemodialysis module, only VGH.
Well, that's strange. Shouldn't everybody have access to the modules? I mean, like, you never know when hospitals are going to do one thing or the other, like, right? So
yeah, that's why I'm saying it should be available. If it's working, it should be available for both sites. And really, I don't think we're going to be doing home hemodialysis once in East Van, once the module is up and running.
I think the issue is the implementation is for the go live. St. Paul's is not in scope for this go live. So the build for St. Paul's wouldn't be completed.
Okay, I'm totally lost, you guys. Like, so you guys are saying everything that we're talking about, we're not going to have access of it from St. Paul's? Then you're gonna have to redo this whole thing? It's ridiculous.
You guys will, but it won't be turned, it won't be turned on for St. Paul's to use it live when VGH goes live. I think that's the issue.
And when do you think that is? When would this be live?
November?
Yeah, because we're doing all of the design enterprise-wide, but the build right now, the project is committed to ensuring that VGH is ready to go in November with Cerner.
Okay, because the discussions we've had here is that we're planning to start the home hemo here as of September.
Okay. Because then with the agreements on scope, previously it was understood that home hemo is a VGH owned program, even though it is shared collaboratively across the two health organizations. So it was like included in the VGH scope. So that's why we're designing it now in light of VGH go live in the fall winter time. And then with the home hemo program from St. Paul's being held in the community dialysis unit, there was the undetermined go live dates for those individual dialysis units. So that's why it wasn't.
Yeah, so I totally get it.
I think this has to go back to the what's the bigger committee called? Sorry, the working group. Thank you, Alberto. The working group, right? Because I can understand nobody wants to waste a whole bunch of time. Sorry for using the phrase waste, but spend, I should say, a lot of time doing this and then not, having it having workable for everybody at the point. I mean, yes, we absolutely need it workable because this is what's going on at VGH for when we go live. But at the same time, you know, I understand what we're saying, Bev, saying they don't want to have a different thing over there. I had no idea that one thing was available and not available.
It doesn't make any sense. I mean, that's why we're all here, right? So a lot of the information's coming because these guys actually know and they've been doing this, but the same thing's going to be available we're going to share the same thing and it should be available to both of us. It doesn't make any sense.
Yep. So you're right. The build and the design will be the same. That's why we're all here together to do the design work and have those discussions to ensure that the build is enterprise-wide and can be used across VGH and St. Paul's. Just with the scope agreements and the discussions previously at the higher levels.
Okay, let's take it to the higher level again, because this is ridiculous. I think this is, again, like Cindy was saying, it is a bit of a waste of our time like this. So can we please take it to the higher level and change the scope?
I can take that back. I don't want you to feel like your time is not wisely spent, because there is really good discussion going on and with how the build will be for home hemo for both sites. It's going to be the same. So I wanted to loop back with this referral order because what you're seeing, can you see the PowerPoint now? So this is a prototype of what the referral to outpatient home hemodialysis order will look like. And from our previous session, there was a request to add the 2 different locations here, one for VGH HD and one for St. Paul's. So I wanted to just show what that would look like. But when internally, our team, when we were having discussions around this, we were unsure about the gaps in the overall referral workflow process. From our understanding, the pre-assessment clinics are determined by the VGH nurse. So how this would work out is if the provider is to select, say, St. Paul's HD home as a location, this referral order will fall to the queue of the St. Paul's clerk. So we weren't sure how the communication would happen if it was going to be out of system to schedule in these patients for their home hemo pre-assessment. Because my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that's being determined by the VGH HD nurse.
So Maritza, again, this is all, it's changing like right now. It's in progress right now. So we are determining how this over thing is going to work. However, what we have decided is that, yes, when we put in location referral to St. Paul's, it will come into our queue. We will look at it, we will assess it. And then at a different, and the rest of it, you don't have to actually know the rest of it, really. It's too confusing, right? But yes, it needs to come into our queue.
Okay. And will the pre-assessment clinic appointments, like, will they be scheduled?
There will be pre-assessments at St. Paul's. There'll be pre-assessments at VGH. They'll be at both sites.
If I may add, this is Alberto here from VGH Home Hemo Clinic. So right now, if we were to get all the referrals to VGH, we will do VGH plus also St. Paul's. So if the future flow will be for referrals, if a patient wanted to go to VGH, fine, the referral can go to VGH. But the fact that we also have to do St. Paul's referrals at the same time, then that confuses things. There still has to be some sort of like verbal communication between St. Paul's and VGH, because VGH and St. Paul's are still alternating between the pre-assessments on a monthly basis.
Yeah, so Alberto, from what I understood from our last, like we had a discussion, you know, it's a smaller group discussion. And basically what will happen is that once we go live, which doesn't sound like it's going to be that much longer, right? Like what we would do is if it's a patient who's dialyzing in center here and we want to make a referral to home hemo, we would discuss with the patient. Some patients actually say they want to train elsewhere, right? If the patient wants to train at St. Paul's, then it would go to the St. Paul's queue, referral to the home hemo for St. Paul's. At a higher level, what Dr. Copeland suggested is that we would then on a monthly basis review all the assessments that have happened at both sites. And for example, if we have a huge wait time at St. Paul's and VGH doesn't, then we would talk to the patient, and the patient, we would talk with the physicians, and then Dr. Copeland would oversee all of this, and the patient would then be referred to train at VGH because it's taking too long at St. Paul's, or vice versa, right? So you're not going to get any referrals from St. Paul's home hemo unless that upper discussions happened. Does that make any sense?
Okay, so what I'm hearing is from me then, when it's VGH's turn to do the pre-assessment, then we won't be doing any of the St. Paul's referrals.
No, so, but if I understand, and I wasn't at that meeting with Merce and Mike, but my understanding is that even if the patient's ultimately going to train at one of the other sites, the assessment might occur elsewhere, right? Because the assessment is the same. It's the training that occurs at a specific site.
Yeah, so
Right.
Sunny, that's the part that we're trying to figure out, because we have, like, for example, for our PD assessments, we have a different workflow than you guys do. And so we're going to try to figure out how that assessment for home chemo is going to occur. So it's not going to be all in one site
Right,
or all through the
okay.
one channel, right? Because because it disrupts workflow, right? Like, that's kind of not our workflow.
Right.
Will your pre-assessment clinics continue to rotate?
Doesn't sound like it.
That's not what I heard.
It sounds like St. Paul's will do St. Paul's referrals and VGH will do VGH referrals.
That's
There's
right.
no reason to rotate when you have two sites, two clinic sites.
I think the reason was just whether or not there would be enough staff, right, to have that assessment all that time, right? Like, there's only 4 patients for assessment every 3 months. You know, to have one assessment clinic for one person at St. Paul's and one for one person at BGH kind of makes no sense, right? Because the nurses may be shared in terms of being on call and doing the assessments. I don't know. I haven't been part of those discussions. So I guess that's something that we might not need to spend too much time on right now because it's not clear.
That's what I was trying to say. That's exactly,
Okay.
Sunny. So Maritza, like, I recognize you have to do this, but this is the work in progress that's occurring right now. So they're having discussions, and, you know, we're trying to figure this out. Like, our workflow may be completely different, right?
And I can appreciate
But
and
it's not going to
understand that.
rotate
Yeah.
back and forth, because
Okay.
it makes no sense, as Dr. Neufeld said.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I think it puts us as an informatics team in a really tight spot when we're trying to build and design right now on really tight timelines, unfortunately, with an undetermined workflow. So we obviously are.
Referral, hi, it's Beth, but the referral order is fine. You either pick VGH or you pick St. Paul's.
Okay.
Exactly. Just make sure that
Okay.
there's a queue. Like, what this, the one that goes from St. Paul's goes to our queue, the one goes to VGH goes to VGH queue. I don't see why this is confusing.
We don't have, there's no scheduling queue built for St. Paul's home hemo, and there's no scheduling built for home hemo St. Paul's right now. So where would that referral go?
So that's what they're trying to figure out. That's what we're working on right now. So we will figure that out. Like, we will make sure that there is like a unit clerk that will go to. Right now, we're thinking it's going to be the PD team because it's going to be under independent, right? But I don't think that that's a big difficult thing to determine, right? But this order form is fine. This is good.
Okay, if you can give me any information on what St. Paul's is going to do, that will really greatly assist us in trying to inform your future build.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay.
But sorry, I do just want to point out, if St. Paul's is not added to the scope, then when we first go live with this, St. Paul's HD home will not be an option. It will only be VGH HD home. And then when we bring St. Paul's onto scope and have the scheduling portion built out for St. Paul's, then that value will be added.
So we had a discussion with Dr. Bouillot and the rest of the team here, recognizing that there's different times that CST can do things and stuff. And when that happens, if that actually is the case, then we will use paper form.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, just recognizing time. There is a reference text that can be embedded in the referral order. So I'm happy, this is just what it would look like in Cerner. So I just need some information to be filled out, which I could probably just send to the providers. This would just be available when a referring clinician enters in this referral to outpatient home hemodialysis. This decision support window will pop up automatically with information about the 2 different home hemo clinics. So if I can send that out, and I just need information to be filled out here. These items here are standard and they're part of the Cerner build. So they do have to have some value or information per each line item. Sorry, just being mindful of time. for the providers on the call, are you able just to stay on for a little bit longer? There's a few more items that I'd like to kind of go through that are just very important.
I have a few minutes, but not that much.
Okay. So with the encounter strategy, we are recommending the use of the existing recurring HD encounter for your home hemo patients. So any non-recurring clinic visits, any of their follow-up appointments, which can be linked to this one recurring encounter. This will ensure that orders and power plans active from the conventional HD encounter will follow the patient as they transition to different locations in their dialysis journey. And it also supports the use of the facility transfer conversation. So that's what we're recommending. With the facility transfer strategy, it is something that is being used currently to support the transfers of patients from St. Paul's HD to the community. And we're hoping to leverage this conversation to move patients between VGH HD to home hemo to independent nocturnal HD and back. What I wanted to caveat here is that there are concerns from the project with adding VGH as a net new health authority to this conversation as a whole. There are concerns from a data collection for the ministry, funding, and health information management perspective. So I wanted just to update the group that there are internal investigations that we're having currently to ensure that there are no downstream impacts. We are engaging with both decision support groups at both health authorities. And ultimately, we plan to present the strategy to the governance or the renal working group for final approval.
So I'm a little bit confused though, right? So when the transition to EMR, because we were one health authority, it was understood that there was more than one hospital in that health authority, right? So why would this be a problem for data management? I mean, that was kind of known at the outset, right? I don't like, sometimes I think something obvious is missing here. Maybe I'm just not smart enough to figure this out, but you know, so why should that be a problem? Because as it was, even right now, a St. Paul's patient may come to VGH, right? So like that already exists. That is part of workflow within this health authority. So why is this a novel concept?
I think it's because we're using a single recurring encounter that remains open as the patient transitions between different locations. So there is concern about the blurring of data and being able to pinpoint where the patient is for reporting to the ministry if they are.
But on the form, it gives the location of the patient, right? So isn't location kind of built in? Isn't that a way to figure out where the patient was? I mean, it's not that complex, is it?
No, I hear you. I think that this is just a very novel solution to support the clinical flow of information for the renal patients in hemodialysis.
Can you give us an example of a recurring thing that stays open when they move? Because that's all foreign to us non-CST.
So I'm going to use the St. Paul's HD to CDU as a great example. So these patients would start off in the St. Paul's HD unit in center. They would have one recurring encounter. So what that means is every time they have their hemodialysis appointment scheduled, those appointments would be linked to that recurring encounter. Any open and active power plans or dialysis prescriptions would also be available to that single recurring encounter. And when the patient transitions to the community, as you saw with the prescription power form, you would select the reason for the transfer and you would select community. So in the system, to ensure that the encounter remains open, we've allowed this feature to be utilized so that the encounter stays open. Only the facility and the location would change. This kind of
allows their medications to continue, for example. Is that the big part of it? So if they're on antibiotics, they would just carry over. Exactly.
So this does deviate slightly from the enterprise, workflows of patient moving from one, site to another. I think that just highlights the uniqueness and the closeness of the patients collectively shared between VGH and St. Paul's. So this is the first time this has been utilized outside of an inpatient example. And I'm going to use.
Okay, so is it possible then that, say, a St. Paul's home dialysis physician orders an antibiotic for 2 weeks on a St. Paul's patient who does home dialysis, that patient then gets admitted to VGH and has dialysis as an inpatient? Some of those orders would carry over by default?
Yes, you can see them, but with
Okay.
that inpatient example that you highlighted, the patient would have an inpatient encounter.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and
But-
yeah,
Maritza, just like what would happen is that they could see it, but they still have to like confirm and do the orders for that encounter. Do you know, or for that, do you know what I mean?
yeah. So the facility transfer like workflow is to make it as simple as possible because there's so much information, orders that can get missed, long-standing information and prescriptions that need to be readily available. So having a single open recurring encounter that stays open, but a location that changes based on where the patient is getting their dialysis treatment is needed. So this would be the nicest way to ensure that flow of information when your VGH home hemo patients transition from conventional HD to home hemo, independent nocturnal, et cetera.
So this is designed to keep that open as long as a patient is an outpatient. When they become an inpatient, then it's an entirely different encounter, right?
Yes, yes, exactly.
So let's not mix that up. So is this also going to apply to PD as well? Because it's valid for PD. It's not just valid for HD.
It's only approved for hemodialysis right now.
But the same thing will happen for PD.
Once we design that, I guess, yeah.
Well, it's just good to say it now so that when people know, they know that it's going to be required for PD because they have to go to the higher ups to get to governance to get permission for this. So you might as well do it for PD at the same time.
Okay, well, why don't we talk about it in the PD session if that's okay, Dr. Singh? I just want to keep focusing on the home hemo portion.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just saying because you're saying that you can't do this right now. Is that what I'm understanding? This is not approved yet, right? So there's no point in us having a discussion about it at PD when I'm telling you it's going to be the same. PD patients move back and forth, right? So
it's a very good point.
Might as well apply for it globally.
And ask Maritza, have the SR requests that came out of using facility transfer been looked into yet or resolved?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's the other issue too. Like even if we get approval to use this facility transfer, it's going to bring on a slew of other issues that come with it.
Yeah, that's right. We noticed that with the transfers of the St. Paul's HD to CDU. There's some limitations to this facility transfer feature in the system, which we already highlighted to the St. Paul's group in light of East Van going live back in November. But given the clinical need to ensure the flow of information and orders, this is the best solution to ensure that there's no errors or risk for errors with multiple different encounters and all that kind of stuff.
It's actually working very well in EastVet when there's a transfer from St. Paul's. It's harder, like when VGH is actually online with Cerner, whenever there's a transfer to a community dialysis unit, then we don't have to reorder everything because most of the orders are there. We just have to kind of check it and finalize it, and we have to confirm the dialysis prescription.
Thank you for that, Dr. Jung. So I wanted to update the group because there were a lot of questions around how we were going to transfer the patients between the different locations. So more to come, but we're leaning towards using this if possible. It's just that the health authority piece, we need to just do our due diligence and check in on the concerns raised around data collection, like I mentioned, health information management, and any sort of funding implications. Okay. I do recognize that we're 10 minutes over. There are a few other things I would like to talk through with the provider groups, but I do want to just highlight if people do need to drop off, we can always try to maybe email out or highlight this in our next session, just recognizing it's really tight on time, unfortunately.
You can keep on going.
Okay. So I'm not sure Carrie's on the line. She did have an update on some orders.
Hi, Maritza, I'm here.
Okay, thanks.
So, okay, we'll just pivot a bit over to order sets. I'm going to share my screen here. Hi, everyone. My name is Carrie. I'm one of the clinical practice leads with order sets team. So I'm just sharing a spreadsheet here. Let me know when you can see it. Yeah, okay. And so I had my first gap session with Dr. Singh, and at the time we had identified a set of PPOs that Home HD is currently using. This is only a portion of it. Today I'm only speaking on the PPOs that won't be built out as power plans, mainly because either they're captured as power forms or they're not in use, or it's going to be ordered via quick orders. And so I just wanted to show the list here so everyone is up to date with what's going on. Do you want me to zoom in a little bit or everyone can see?
It's okay.
Okay, thanks. So I just want to highlight the first three here. These would be ordered in quick orders. And I'll just start off with the first one. This is the VCH 712 home hemodialysis alteplase orders. So in quick orders, we're going to request to have an ordered inserted into your quick orders, similar to what we're doing for PD. And then within the order comment, it'll have all the instructions for the patient. And we also want to specify there will be a little note saying that this one specifically is for Home HD, so that it doesn't get confused with the PD one. And Dr. Singh, we just wanted to confirm for the order, for the frequency, is it okay if it's once? That means when you write the prescription, it's only for a one-time order. Or is there like a different frequency that's more suitable?
Well, yeah, I mean, the home patients, they usually get more than one at a time. So they have a supply on at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it needs to be like a total number rather than just once, because it's, let's say, it's a PRN order, right? It's not just a single time order. They will not always call before they use their TPA. They're given instructions to use at home.
We can do doses.
I see what you mean. So that prescription could have like for a total number of doses.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah.
What do you want us to pre-fill it as? Or sorry, Winnie, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just telling Dr. Singh, like for the frequencies, often words like once or Q weekly. So it'd be better if we can put in like dispense. So like how many vials that generally we would dispense to the patient, because it's actually an outpatient prescription that will be generated.
Right. Yeah. So if it was like Q run PRN and then a total number of doses, would that make sense? So
Hi,
I'm just looking at the paper PPO right now. One sec. Yeah, the paper PPO just says the alteplase, and then it says number of vials. So we can add whatever number of vials, but it doesn't say a frequency or anything on it.
Hi, this is Dee Dee from Provider Experience. Just wanted to point out, if we leave the frequency blank, it just defaults to once. So that's why if we wanted something in the, like if we don't want the frequency as once, then we do have to pre-fill the frequency section.
Did you want to have it like every HDPRN and then a number of
vials? I think QHDPRN.
Yeah.
And then a total number to be dispensed. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because the frequency, I'm just testing it, like there is a frequency for hemodialysis. So you can just write hemodialysis as a generic and then just select PRN as a pre-filled.
Yeah, that looks pretty good. Pretty
yeah,
flexible.
and then just put in like a general dispense, depending on the number of vials. And I think that'll be the most clear for the outpatient pharmacy.
How many vials do you normally provide the patients at one time?
Does anyone know if it comes like in a box of vials? Should we just standardize it to one box? Is it
I mean,
four?
is Emmy or Maxon, they would know?
So we would normally send them at least 6 vials if their catheter has been having problems. But if during their training, really not a lot of problems with their line, we would just send them 4 vials.
Okay, sounds like it's flexible. We can just put a number. And they have a long shelf life when they're not mixed, when they're not constituted, right?
So the patient just has it on hand and they'll be PRN.
Yeah. We don't want to waste them if they're expensive. So Max, do you know if the shelf life is it like a year?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, anyway, we won't find that out today.
Winnie.
This is Winnie. I mean, like the pharmacists, but basically it's just the expiry date that's on the vial. So it could be a year, it could be longer, just depending on what the pharmacy has dispensed. As long as it's not punctured, then it'd be the expiry date that's written on the vial itself. And in terms of whether or not it comes as a box or anything like that, just due to the cost of the medication, it'd be best if we can just specify like maybe like 5 vials or something, just like the exact number, rather than not to go by the box instead, because there could be more wastage that way.
Okay.
Or am I hearing the frequency will be hemodialysis and it'll be 5 vials that you want it pre-filled?
Most often, I think. Okay. Sometimes we'll put Q weekly on dialysis, but this is the most common prescription I could see.
And PRN.
And the PRN.
With PRN, yes.
Yeah.
And do you have to choose a PRN or can you just?
Yeah, you can do other or see comments or something, and then you can write it in special instructions.
Is there a PRN catheter malfunction?
I don't think so.
I'll double check for you.
You do this in East Van yet?
We wouldn't be dispensing alteplase through Cerner currently.
But there
is
a
home hemo.
Right. Okay.
There is an order,
There's an
order, yeah, that you can order, and it's all pre.
Right, but you don't dispense because it's yeah, right, okay. Yeah, others fine. Yeah.
Okay. Didi, do you need any other information?
This is all good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Because Winnie was saying that it should be like a already created where it says like 5 vials to dispense. Can that be done?
Yep. And if there's any changes, for example, you want Q weekly or anything, you can just select the order and you can make any changes you like before you print the prescription.
Okay.
Okay, so that was alteplase. The next one we have here, this is for your topicals. On the PPO right now, there are 2 medications on there. That's the Emla cream and also the Maxilene. Both of them are also available on your quick orders. If you click into the order, in the order comment, there is a mention that it is specific for hemodialysis. So this is already built out and ready for you to use. And then the next one we have here, this is for antibiotics. And again, the PPO consists of 3 antibiotics, cefazolin, gentamicin, and also vancomycin. And again, these 3 are available under the folder antimicrobials. So this is also ready for you to use as well. And that consists of the items that will be found on quick orders. These 2 are your HD prescriptions, which will be captured on the power form. And then this one, I was told that it's no longer used for home hemo. So we are not building anything out for this one. And as for the remaining PPOs that will be built out, either in existing power plants that are already used by St. Paul's or net new ones, we will be discussing that in the order sets design session. There is one on May 3rd. I know Dr. Singh, you can't attend. However, Dr. Jung and Dr. Kiai, I think you accepted the invitation. So in that
I think it's just me, Dr. Jung.
Oh, okay.
And Dr. Harris.
Perfect. At the time, I'll be talking about the 4 core power plans that are used for HD and home HD. I'll point out the differences, like what's missing from the power plans compared to the PPOs. And then you let me know if it should be added into the power plans so that I know what to update. And if I miss anything from that session, there's another session after that that's held on May 5th. I believe Dr. Singh, you have accepted invitation for that. And Dr. Neufeld, would you like to be invited to any of these sessions?
I am, well, sure, I'll sure, you can invite me. I just don't know if I'll be free.
Yeah, I can forward the invite to you, and if you can make it, then that'd be great. If not,
I'll be looking after dialysis, so I guess that's why Dr. Harris is free to attend, but I don't know if I'll be free.
okay, got it. I'll just send it to you. If you can attend, then I'll see you there.
Okay.
Okay, that summarizes my update. I'll give it back to you, Maritza.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. We are 20 minutes over the first hour. So again, I'm just checking in with the providers if they're able to stay. If not, I could email this out for review. It's just in regards to the standing lab requisition that's given to home hemo patients after they finish the training program. And you're good to stay, or you have to leave?
No, I've just got some more time.
Okay. So we wanted to bring this up as a decision point because the current requisition, like I mentioned, is given to the patient upon completion of their training. And just to recap quickly, their current workflow, if they're off-site, they would collect blood work with the lab requisition. If they come back on-site, if they're being scheduled for independent nocturnal dialysis, they can come back with the requisition and collect their blood work. So with that being said, we wanted to ask the group if they wanted to keep the requisition on paper or explore Cerner order entry options. So collectively as an internal team, we recognize that this workflow is a little bit different than your normal kind of nurse or lab collect workflow because the patient independently collects their own blood work. They also can get it done in the community or come back on site. So there are those different scenarios. So we are leaning towards a paper option because it is a little bit more streamlined and less complicated, less disruptions for the nurses. If we are looking at a power plan option, that does lend into activation at different phases, perhaps depending on the power plan option that we can explore. I'm not sure if Jack is on the line, if you wanted to pipe in or add any more to that.
Yeah, hi Marissa. So we did look at both options, and the option 2, we thought about a couple of different design on how we would electronically place the order. The difficulty with compared to paper is that when you place an order in Cerner, you kind of have to provide a estimated collection date. And that is a little bit different than it was on paper, where you don't have to specify that date. Things are really up for interpretation by the end user. So if we were going to do option 2, most likely we have to account for scenarios where the patient might go to a HD unit and collect it there. And then there will need to be an activation of the order so that we can use up the future order that was placed. There's a lot more maintenance involved when you think about the electronic placement of the orders as compared to the paper. And also because if we need to assign a specific date to these orders, we would have to break them down into what is required for each month so that the patient can bring that requisition to the lab and say, I'm here for this list of blood work with the blood sample that I collected, which means that you can have up to 12 pieces of paper for the whole year because every month is a little bit different. So taking all that into account and also talking to BGH lab for the small instance where the patient might go to the HD unit for their collection or to do their own collection, BGH lab is open to the idea that, with the current paper requisition can be sent down with the specimen that is collected by the patient, and they will back enter that into the downstream system, which will then come back to Cerner. And then they will minimize the effort from the nurses to try to activate orders. I think that pretty much summarizes it.
Sounds like option 1 is the winner.
Okay, sounds good. We do have to do our kind of CST processes of having this presented at the governance groups, the lab and the renal working group, but we will relay your preference for the paper option.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't mentioned yet, but fact is you can't tell a patient that for the next year, these are the days you're going to do your blood work. It's just not going to happen.
Exactly, yeah.
And I'm sure Max and Emmy will agree that patients do their blood work when they get a chance and when they have time, and the day doesn't always work or it's not always appropriate when you plan to do it at a given day. So that would just never work.
Yeah, and we definitely wanted to support the independency of the patients after completing the program and being able to do their own kind of blood work and stuff. So yeah, the paper option makes the most sense.
I can think just of a dozen reasons just off the top of my head why you can't have set dates.
Yeah. And Dr. Neufeld, just one thing, with option 1, I'm curious if there's any, what is the current state for trying to keep a copy of that requisition that was given to the patient, if it remains on paper? Because one of the cons that we identified with option 1 is that potentially we might need to keep a record of what was given to the patient. So do you guys keep it on shelf or is it scanned in?
It's in a paper chart right now, right, Max? You keep a copy of the record that's given to the patient, but they're pretty standardized forms.
Yeah, so we do keep a copy in the chart. Basically, we send out this lab recs before the end of the year. It's going to be a standing order for the labs so the patient would just go to the lab and they would already have the standing order. Basically.
Yeah, so if this could be scanned into Cerner as a document, I guess that would be the way to keep a copy of it.
Okay.
Jack, it's Flo. Yeah. If we're scanning paper recs back into Cerner, is there a particular document type we should be scanning them as?
Let me get back to you on the appropriate document type, because I think we need to connect with HIM to verify.
Okay, thanks.
Peter, can I just understand how it's been for the patients who are independent but doing their nocturnal hemodialysis in hospital? Do they have their blood work drawn by the nurse or are they drawing it themselves?
Alberto, do you know if the
nurse is drawing it?
There's only 6 patients doing that, right?
Currently, yeah.
Yeah, in the entire program, there's only 6 patients, so it's not a large volume.
Okay, so we would still have the paper copy for those patients to take to the lab for their lab work.
Sounds like it could still work that way, yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Great, thank you. Okay, I did want to jump into additional workflows, one of them being BPMH and MedRec. It was just something that wasn't highlighted in our initial design session. So Cerner will be the source of truth for medication history when it is implemented at BGH. I did want to highlight that PharmaNet can be leveraged. There is a feature in Cerner where you can import information to support the completion of a patient's BPMH. Considering that these are outpatients, there is this outpatient MedRec function that needs to be utilized. As the system allows, there are inpatient MedRec features and functionality such as admission, transfer, and discharge. But for the home hemo area, we are just looking at the outpatient MedRec. There is also this able to acknowledge remaining home meds for medications that the clinic provider is not managing, and I could go into the system to show that. So from a MedRec perspective, we would recommend completing it when there are any major changes in the patient's home medications. if the patient had a recent admission or discharge from acute care, let's say they went through ED, became an inpatient, and had a length of stay in the hospital, for any net new patients that are coming through, and as always, up to the clinician's discretion. So let me see if I can share my PowerPoint, power chart. Can you guys see power chart? I'm just logged in into a test patient. So, comments or questions before I begin? Okay. So I am in the dialysis management tab, and there are different components here. So one of them being the home medications component. So as you can see here, there are these like blue circles with a white exclamation mark, just indicating that they have yet to be completed. And these are hyperlinks, so I can click into that and another window will appear, allowing me to complete a best medication history. So I would converse with the patient, discuss if there are any home medications they were taking. And if there were, I would click this add button here and then add in a type of medication. So let's say it was Ramapril. And then I could then document the history. I would obviously fill out the dose information, the route of the administration, how often they were taking it, et cetera. You can document the history. And at that window, I could continually add any net new home medications that the patient can be taking. So just for the sake of the demo, I just completed it after adding that one medication. You'll notice now that the status has a green check mark indicating that it's been completed. So moving over to the MedRec feature, there's this outpatient hyperlink here, and it will take me to the MedRec window. Naturally, the patient may have more medications listed here, but you'll notice that there are 3 different features for the MedRec functionality in Cerner. You have this green triangle, which indicates you want to continue a certain medication. There's a pill bottle that indicates prescription. And then the orange or red square just means that you want to discontinue or stop it altogether. Like I mentioned in my slide, there is this acknowledge remaining home meds button here. So if there were medications that you didn't manage as a clinic provider, but you want to just acknowledge them, you can select this button here. As you do like learning and your training with the different modules closer to your go live, you'll learn a little bit more about the different icons here. But for the MedRec feature, this kind of scroll icon indicates that the medication is from home or the patient's taking it from home. This little wheelchair icon here indicates that it was a medication for the outpatient ambulatory setting. So you can see, you can always just hover to discover as well. So let's say I just want to continue with the Ramapril, maybe, stop the Tylenol here because there's 2, and then continue this one here. And then I could just click sign to complete my MedRec. And then you also notice here that there is a green check mark here to indicate that it's been done. So I noticed, sorry, I'm just going to ask Winnie if from St. Paul's, if you've had any concerns with using BPMH or MedRec.
No, not at all. So
Okay.
it'll be very easy and yeah.
Okay, and it is like a shared responsibility between yourself as a pharmacist and the providers?
Yeah, definitely. And then I would see from home hemo perspective, the nurses will definitely be helping as well, similar to how the PD and KCC clinics currently being run. But generally, we do use the BPMH function more frequently because just to acknowledge the medications that the patients are on from other providers, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I wanted to highlight too is there's a feature in Cerner where you can generate a patient-friendly document just to highlight what their home meds are and so forth. So there is a auto text that can be utilized. So going into the system, I'm just going to choose a free text note and then enter in the auto text, and that will pull in allergy information as well as any documented home medications. Here, as you can see, and then that can be completed and printed off and handed to the patient so that they would have an updated list of their home medications. Okay, that was what I wanted to talk through about BPMH. I'm just going to jump back into my PowerPoint here. The other workflow I wanted to highlight was the home hemodialysis patient to inpatient. So we kind of talked through it a little bit. So in the event that the home hemodialysis patient needs to be admitted as an inpatient, their recurring encounter will remain active. The patient will have that inpatient encounter, and as they're admitted for their inpatient stay, anything that's HD related will need to be documented and linked to the inpatient encounter. So if they require any HD appointments or runs while they're an inpatient, those appointments will need to be linked to the inpatient encounter. Any documentation will have to be done in that inpatient encounter, as well as an HD prescription or any HD related orders and or power plans. Upon discharge and return to home hemo, the recurring encounter will be used once again. Okay. The other portion of the session is a little bit more kind of nursing focused. So Dr. Neufeld and the other providers, I understand that you have stayed way longer than necessary. So if you do need to drop off now, that's fine. I just want to say thank you again for your input.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to talk through transonic monitoring. So your patients are scheduled for their appointments every 3 months. Documentation will be completed in iView, and I wanted to dive into the system to show what that would look like. So let me just jump back into PowerChart here. Okay. You guys can see that okay, PowerChart? Okay, so I'm logged in as a nurse. So iView is accessible through the table of contents here. Up. So there are different bands here with a number of different sections. So the transonic monitoring documentation fields are found in the hemodialysis flow monitoring section. So double clicking through the different response fields, there are different responses that can be selected. So let's say maybe it's a routine indication. You can indicate and enter in the dialysis time elapsed. It's in units of minutes. This little diamond icon indicates that there are conditional logic, which means depending on the response selected, there may be additional responses that will appear based on what you initially chose. So access type, there's a number of different access types, from AV fistulas, grafts to central venous catheters, and laterality. So let's say I'm going to choose fistula. As you can see, there's a lot of different line items that have just appeared here. So that is specific to the selection of the AV fistula. So there's a line item to allow you to document their blood pressure during the flow monitoring. So I'm going to just say it's 120 over 60. Maybe their pulse is 80. Hoping this is clinically relevant. Sorry. And pressure-wise, I'm sorry. I'm just going to make some numbers up here. So apologies. And you do have a delivered flow QB line item here, as well as access flow 1 and 2. And you have the recirculation line item here, which is in a percentage unit. I mean, I'm just going to say 50%. And there is a line item here to include any comments or procedure ordered. It's a free text box. You can kind of free text anything in here relating to that line item. There is a field here to indicate if you've documented this information in promise. So it's either yes or no. So with the coming of Cerner, promise won't go away. So there's a lot of information that you're currently documenting in promise that will likely need to continue. So one of them being your transonic monitoring data. You can indicate yes. And then the last line item here is the planned next transonic date for the patient. So you can enter in a date.
Hey, Maritza, it's Irvin. Just want to chime in and say that I think because this is an St. Paul's patient, it will look a little different than what VGH will be seeing on their end in terms of the conditional logic, starting from the access type up there. I can quickly show what it will look like for different VGH arena locations, if you want me to do that. Okay, one moment. Can you or someone make allow me to share my screen.
Yep, you're a co-host now. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, just going back to the transonic section here. So if you notice, so I'm gonna go ahead and click on AV fistula, left or right, it will show up the same. And it will give us these three fields here. It won't show the, what was it, the arterial, the pressure with 200 on it. And then for central venous, it will give us line reverse and delivered flow QB. And then based from another session from a different, from vascular access, we've added post-fistulogram as an indication as well. So these are just the changes that will be appearing for any VGH renal locations that we have changed. That's really it, Maritza.
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot about.
Here. I'm guessing this has already been approved by the hemodialysis side, or I guess okay by the hemodialysis side, along with a vascular access nurse.
Yes, so it was taken to an ED to a design decision, and then it was approved. But the AS originated from vascular access.
Okay.
Thanks, Irvin.
No problem.
Okay.
Stopping now.
Okay, so that was all I really had to speak to about the transonic monitoring. So I hope that was helpful to kind of see, and thanks Irvin for showing more of the VGH specific DTAs. I'm going to hand it over to Kathy. She's joined our group session to talk through some allied health stuff and review. Kathy, are you here?
Hi, yes, can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm one of the clinical informatics leads at PHC, so just supporting this work from the allied health space. And I'm joined by Stephanie Lau, who is a clinical informatics specialist with our team as well. So who do we have on the line that's from allied health at VGH or PHC?
Mim Wickett, OT practice coordinator for VGH.
Oh, hey, Mim.
Hi, I'm Kevin, pharmacist.
Hey, Kevin.
I'm the social worker for home hemo at VGH.
Oh, sorry, what's your name?
Courtney, sorry.
Hey, Courtney.
I'm Sarah, social worker at VGH.
Hey, Sarah.
That's Jarik, dietitian from VGH.
Oh, hey, Jarik. Okay, great. So we have OT, social work, pharmacy, and dietitian on the line. Wonderful. So what I'll show you today and maybe try to clarify some questions of just basically how you know which patients to see in this space and how you would do some of your documentation. I'm going to share my screen here. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I know you all have had sort of your own sessions with OT, pharmacy, dietitian, and social work. And a lot of that is probably represented by your professional practice lead. There are certain sort of SMEs that were suggested to us by each health organization. So Jarik, for example, Teresa Sividin, and Charles Go have been attending a lot of the dietitian enterprise sessions. And then Mim, I think you're involved with all of those for OT. So in terms of social work and OT and I think pharmacy, I'm not showing you anything really different today because I think your practice leaders have done a really good job of coming together and designing your electronic documentation from the beginning and making it enterprise. What I'm showing you here is the multi-patient task list. So have your other sessions shown you how this works to receive consults from your team members?
I haven't seen it.
Okay, great. So I'll just show you a little snippet of it today. So I'll just open up a patient chart here. I'm logged in as a social worker. I'm just pulling up a test patient. I'm using the PD unit just as an example. You will have your own VGH home hemo unit there. As for every patient chart that you open, you assign a relationship so that you know you're kind of leaving your digital footprint of why you're entering that patient's chart. And so in this patient chart, right now for social work, dietitian, OT, and pharmacy, how do physicians or nurses, how do they consult you right now in the home hemo space?
Usually just in person or via email, I would say.
Yeah, and I think.
Oh, sorry, ma'am.
I think for OT, I think there's maybe a clipboard as well, just for notes or written referrals.
Okay.
Or in person.
Okay. And Maritza, can you remind me for home hemo, will it be a recurring encounter?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason why I ask is because every time you open a patient chart, we kind of recommend that you just kind of do a little quick check of what encounter that you're using. Everything in CST Cerner is encounter based. So you want to make sure you're opening up the chart in the right encounter in the right location. So right now, it says PD unit, but it will say VGH home hemo for you. And say a nurse or a physician or even one of your interdisciplinary team members want to consult you. What's kind of cool about CST Cerner now is that we don't have to have all these different spots of like a clipboard or verbal orders. It can be done through an actual order so that you can kind of count up how many times your profession is consulted and also the reasons for the consult. For example, let's do consult to not all of the orders are showing up at this specific location just because it's a test location in our domain, but I'll do OT consult as an example. You indicate the physician, the MRP, but if it's within your scope to make that consult, you would select no co-signature required. And then this shows up. So I'll say OT consult, and then a mandatory field for you here, ma'am, would be the reason for consult. So there's, hopefully there's no more, OT to see, but, for them to actually indicate a reason. So what would be a reason that they would consult you in this home hemo space?
So for home safety equipment. Is that free text or is it a drop down?
It's free text.
Okay.
I know the sort of regional OT PPLs are wanting to come up with a drop down list to help.
I'm happy with free text. I think it's actually a lot easier.
Okay. Does Peter Houghton know that?
I'm sure there's been a lot of discussion of pros and cons. We all have our different opinions.
Yeah. And so I've put in that order. So what I'll do is I'll open up the chart as an OT here. And I have my multi-patient task list. Let me just double check that I have it set up to the right location. Yep, SPH PD unit. And when I refresh, there it is, that consult flows through. So because your patients are in a recurring encounter, it will capture all of these consults that go through. In sort of Cerner language, you're using slightly different verbiage from here on out. Consults generally mean inpatient consults and referrals mean outpatient or ambulatory. Renal is the one exception to that rule because you do have these recurring encounters, so you can leverage these multi-patient task lists. In other ambulatory care areas, patients come in for a visit, they go home, they have separate outpatient encounters each time, in which case each time that order is going to get auto discontinued with that discharge. but lucky for you in this renal space, it stays. So all your consults will flow here. In boot camps, we'll show you how to set up your multi-patient task list appropriately. And this is really great because you can see all the consults. You can then complete them. So if you go in here, you can open the patient chart. You can review all the necessary documentation that you need as an OT. You would do your assessment. Then there's the power form that I think your PPLs have made. That's really comprehensive. So no need to fill out every section, just the ones that are relevant to you. It takes a little bit getting used to all the different sections, but our OTs now at St. Paul's are pretty good at knowing where things are and which sections they need to fill out. So you would chart that in a power form. My recommendation is even if, because now all clinicians should have access to the electronic chart, if there ever is a verbal consult or referral, just ask them to enter it in. And if say they're whatever reason so busy that they can't enter it in, you can enter it in yourself. You can enter in, you know, an OT consult or a self-consult to keep track of those numbers and why you're consulted. Something else that is available to you is, okay, so say I'm seeing Mr. SPH-PD. I do his home safety equipment assessment, but you know, there's some more paperwork that I need to do. I need to follow him for a little while longer. I'm not doing a sort of one assessment and I'm done. I can keep him in my caseload by putting in a following order. And what that means is basically indicating to others and to yourself that he is actively on my caseload and I'm actively following him. So when you do that, folks will enter in the chart and they can see that, okay, yeah, OT is still following them, but also in your sort of task list, in your following tab, you'll know, okay, yeah, he's someone I'm still actively working on and still need to complete that paperwork for.
Can I just ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like so, I don't know, maybe I missed this, but you went into a patient file and then you saw there were orders. Let's say from a nephrologist. But is this like attached to our email or something? Because unless we went into the patient file, how will we know there was an order?
Because right here in the multi-patient task list, this is where the order flows for you. So even if I don't have the chart open, so I'm going to kind of close that chart in the background. This is a landing page in CST Cerner. And so without even opening charts, it tells me which patients I received consults for.
Okay, so like, just like logistically, like when you get to work, you would like log on to Cerner right away, and then you would see the consults right away.
Exactly.
Okay, so, okay.
So is that person specific, or is that because if someone's covering that day, is it like a caseload that they go into? How do different people access different caseloads?
Yeah, really good question. So as I've kind of configured my task list for today, I've selected the PD unit. You'll select your home hemo unit. If your clinicians cover multiple units, say they cover home hemo, but they also cover inpatient renal care, they would select that in here. Okay. So I would select, renal PD, but then I would also then go and select inpatient 7th floor. And so that basically, it doesn't know, okay, that's MIM's caseload. It knows that it just pulls in all the consults on those locations. So if someone is covering for you, you kind of need to know sort of operationally, okay, MIM works these floors. So if I'm covering for her, I need to change my multi-patient task list to those locations.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm. But someone that they're following, like you just opened, like OT following, that would be specific to the provider. Like, for example, I'm vacation coverage, so I cover everybody in social work. So if Courtney was following something, but let's say she's away for a week, would I be able to see that, or would that only come up for Courtney's like log on, and I would just see the order?
Yeah, good question. So this OT following order is visible to everyone. It's not specific to Courtney. So I think you'll see, like, as you use it, you know, this list of the patients you're following are going to ebb and flow, right? You're going to have more or less over the course of your sort of weeks or months, but it's not going to be specific to Courtney. So if you are vacation coverage for 5 floors for VGH, you're going to have to change your settings to those 5 floors. But I'm hoping that whoever is asking you to do vacation coverage will give you a little bit of indication of, okay, yeah, I'm following 50 patients on 5 floors, but these are the top 10 priority. So I know here at St. Paul's, our OTs, PTs do it a certain way, where in the reason for follow-up, they might modify that comment to, you know, priority 1, or they might indicate like a date for follow-up. So what I could do is open up that patient chart. Again, make sure I'm in the right encounter here. And under that following, I can always modify it, and I can say follow-up April 20. Sign that, and it will automatically reflect that in my multi-patient task list when I refresh, so that it helps you manage your caseload and dictate your work.
Sorry, can I just ask, so can you differentiate? So say in kidney clinic or home dialysis, there's like 3 social workers that are all working there. Would the specific social worker's name be attached, or it would just say social work referrals? Like, is there a way to differentiate who has which?
Unfortunately, no, there's just sort of one social work consult order. So right now, if there's 3 social workers in home hemo, how do they divide up which patients they see?
Yeah, that's just what I'm wondering, because we would all have different caseloads, but on this you're saying is they would all just come up as social work. You wouldn't be able to see who was attached to it.
Correct, yeah, it'll say social work consults if it's for that patient in that location. And then so whatever way operationally that you divide up the caseload now. So for example, I know I think our social workers and dietitians here divided up by the letter of the last name. So if that's the same way, then I'll pull up my task list for the day. Okay, Mr. SPHPD, last name 8S, that falls under my caseload, so I take that.
Just to add to that, I think for the dietitians anyway, it's not divided by letter. And so we kind of take turns to see who's going to take a new patient. This is more for hemo, like in-center hemo, when there's a bigger patient population. But when it's split up like that and it's not by alphabet, we also add ourselves as a care provider on promise, and that's how we can see who the care providers are for that particular patient. So it sounds like for Cerner, we don't necessarily divide by care provider, but we can see it as just who's being followed by a specific allied health worker, but by location, right?
Yeah, yeah. So Jarek, right now when you receive a consult for a new home hemo patient, then how would you divide up those patients amongst all the dietitians?
So right now, it's actually easier for home hemo because I'm the only dietitian covering home hemo, but I'm thinking for other modalities like PD, where it's split between two dietitians, and in-center hemo, where it's split between four dietitians, that's where it could get a little bit more confusing, unless we're using Promise in conjunction with Cerner to kind of divide our caseload and follow that way.
Okay. Okay.
Kathy, there's just a quick comment in the chat.
Oh,
Would
yeah.
using the patient list in tandem with the multi-patient task list help?
Certainly, there's sort of many different ways to do things in Cerner, and I think it's just important that you as a program kind of decide which way, just so that there's some consistency, and if people are covering for you, that they know. What Maritza mentioned is patient list, which is basically a way that you can pull all patients that are registered to a certain location, but it's also got the capacity to create a custom list. So if you know which 20 patients you're following, you can add them all to, okay, this is Jerry's patient list, so that you know who you're following. Derek, let me think about that a little bit more, especially for your in-center hemo, if you have 4 dietitians. And if it's not as obvious as splitting up the last name like we do at St. Paul's, let me think about a few things and get back to you. I think there's a hemo session next week.
And I think the other thing that we do right now when we have to cover for another dietitian, for in-center hemo, for example, is that currently we can create patient lists through Promise because we assign ourselves as a care provider. And so what happens is if, let's say, I'm going on vacation for 3 weeks, I can make my list public within Promise, and then the other dietitians can then search for my name and access my list. So I'm wondering if there's something perhaps that's similar on Cerner.
Yeah, good idea. There is something similar, and that would be your patient list, where you could make your custom list. So you would have, your 30 patients followed by Jerry. And then there's something called proxy in CST Cerner, where similarly you can then proxy it or share your list to other people. So if there's like a group of 5 of you or 4 of you, you can share it to each other so you know who's following who. Would that kind of replicate what you're using now, Jerry?
I think so. Like as long as we can all access each other's caseload that we're specifically following, then that would be similar in terms of workflow. I think we just have to know, okay, now that we're logging in and covering for somebody, we should look at the location specific kind of list for consults, any new consults, but also access the list, the specific patient list of whoever we're covering for.
Yeah, that's right. Will you be in the session next Friday?
I think that's a different dietitian on the hemodialysis session, but they work together.
Okay, thanks, Flo. What I'll do is I'll set up some example lists of, Angela's patients, Karen's patients, Jerry's patients, and I can demo it then. And I can also send you some screenshots, Jerry, to see if that meets your needs.
Sure, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, I'll note that. I'm cognizant of time, so I'm going to move us ahead. Mim, do you have any questions about OT documentation with that power form?
No, it should be the same as all the other inpatient areas.
Yeah.
We have just one OT in this area, but this discussion is pertinent to other areas where there's 2 or 3 OTs with various ways of dividing caseloads. But yeah, so it'll be helpful in other areas, but not for this area.
Okay. And I'll share, I'll make these sort of example patient lists and I'll share it with with you too, Mim, if that's applicable. Sarah and Courtney, Do you have any questions about social work documentation? Has that been covered in other sessions you've attended?
This is the first session I've attended.
Okay.
So I don't really know, but if Sarah has been to the other ones.
Okay, I'll just show you quickly then. There's basically two main ways that social work document. The first one, and probably the most predominant one, is your psychosocial assessment. And so this is a power form that your social work PPLs all came together and created. So similar to the OTPT ones, you have lots of sections that you could use, but you don't need to fill out every one. Only the ones with the star and yellow fields are the ones that are mandatory. So you'll notice, for example, here, consent details are mandatory because of practice standards governed by our colleges. So that's here. And this advanced care plan field is here. And you can click unable to answer at this time if that's not something you have available to you. And yeah, it's basically your psychosocial assessment. So taking a lot from your paper charts and assessments that you have now, they've put it into an electronic format. I don't know if it would be helpful for me to click through everything or if you want to see screenshots later.
Oh, don't worry about it. I know it's probably really detailed, but that's helpful just to see what the layout will look like. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll show you just kind of what it'll look like as well. So when I sign this form, oh, I've missed a mandatory field. So a little pop-up will show up saying, hey, you missed a mandatory field. So I'll do that. I'll sign it. And I will caution you how Cerner takes all these power forms and puts it into what we call a textual rendition. It's not super friendly to read. It does look something like this, where it shows, you know, every field label, every field answer, and then who signed it. But whenever you see something like this in the documentation filter, that's kind of a trigger for you to think, oh gosh, this used to be a power form. So I should look at it in the form browser section of the chart, where I can then review it in that form, in that format that whoever filled it out did it in, but it's also much easier to read. And then every sort of field that is charted on will be bold like this, so you don't have to click through things that weren't ever filled out, but it'll be bolded so you can review that charting. Another way as a social work to document is you can just do a simple free text note. So in documentation, you can do add, and you would select what note type you would use. This is pretty important in terms of just categorizing your note correctly so that other people can find it, and also future you can find it. There's different templates to use, but I've starred my favorite one, which is the free text. And so this is where you can do a very quick sign and submit. I would review all my fields and sign. And there it is. Questions about social work documentation?
I just have a question. So we're talking about home hemo, right? And So you know the I see that the like psychosocial is already like prescribed kind of thing, like it's in there for us to fill in. Do you have the same for pre-assessment? Like when social work is involved in the pre-assessment that we do every other month or what have you, is there a place to document that? Or I guess they haven't come on board for home hemo yet, so they're not technically assigned. So anyone who's pre-assessment wouldn't be part of CERNA? I don't know. Can you explain that piece to me?
Well, if a patient is part of pre-assessment, you mean that they are, say, followed by the kidney care clinic, like before they are sort of eligible for home hemo? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. And then we would have like some documentation around that because we would meet with them in the pre-assessment clinic. Does any of that get documented in the CERNA, or is that something separate?
Maritza and Flo, so for pre-assessment clinic, would that be in a different encounter or a different location? I'm sorry, I don't know specific renal things.
You know what I mean, Flo?
It's a home hemo pre-assessment clinic that would be documented in Cerner under a home hemo encounter.
So the same thing we're looking at now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So is there already, like the psychosocial was a prescribed sheet already for social work? Is there something for pre-assessment that is also has been done maybe with St. Paul's that we've already inputted? I'm just wondering because today we're gonna just look at for VGH what we're doing for our pre-assessment for social work and just review it. But if there's already something in CERNA that's in place, then we might as well just use that one.
I think it's whatever Kathy you were showing, right? That was the social work assessment power form. Are there other variations of that? Or Sarah, is there something you were thinking of that you didn't see here that is missing?
Well, for pre-assessment for home hemo, we might not be looking at exactly the same things that we would in a psychosocial. So social work might be, so do you want us to use this psychosocial or?
I guess what would be helpful is if you could provide what you use now for pre-assessment, and we can try to see if St. Paul's has developed something. I mean, to my knowledge, we're just using the psychosocial assessment or a free text note, but I can definitely ask around if you can share like a PDF of your pre-assessment form right now.
Yeah, we don't actually have something formal that we've been using. We're actually just meeting today to develop something that's more specific criteria. So I guess once we come up with that, we would just send it to you or?
Yeah, send it to me. I'll pop my, actually maybe send it to Stephanie. Steph, can you put your, in your email in the chat if possible? Because she will be taking over the dietitian and OT and social work portfolio. Sorry, not OT, social work portfolio.
Okay, thanks.
In the comment section, how to contact? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, send it over to Stephanie and we can take a look at it and see what we do here at St. Paul's. And, you know, in so much of the CST project is the C, which is the clinical and systems transformation. So I think if we can align VGH pre-assessment, home hemo documentation with SPH pre-assessment as well, that would be great. Okay, good question, Sarah and Courtney. Okay, I'm cognizant of not taking up too much more time because of the packed agenda, but I do want to show very quickly dietitians how you would be charting. And we're a little bit different, Jerick, where we chart in something called iView, where it's a flow sheet like way, because we see so much stuff over time and trends over time. And so we have a special nutrition care iView band that Teresa and Eileen at the time, now Charles, has reviewed. And we've gone through, and I won't go through in detail today, but I can send you everywhere that we've mapped out of your assessment form to make sure that we have it covered. And special fields that I do want to point out is the anthropometrics part, because you do, as dietitians, you want to take note of their interdialytic weight gain. So we do have a field here called interdialytic weight gain range. And it's a alphanumeric field because we recognize that some patients might dialyze every other day or might have 3 days between their runs. So the range is really variable, but this is where you can really be descriptive.
Okay, so I can put in whether it's a percentage or in kilos or in liters or whatever we decide at that time.
Yeah, exactly. I know the PPLs were kind of mulling over, oh gosh, should we keep it as kilograms or liters? But recognizing that different clinicians also have different methods of calculating interdialytic weight gain, and especially if you are putting percentage as well, which I think is a more common practice at BGH, you can do that here.
I think Kathy and Stephanie, I wonder if Teresa has been exchanging emails with you about documenting body composition monitoring.
Yes. Good point. Before I move on to that, I also wanted to show you as well, I think, where is it? Estimated daily urine output. I think that's something that you would ask your patients and they would sort of patient reported estimate to you in terms of fluid requirements and fluid losses. But yes, so Teresa has been asking about body composition monitoring. So how physicians can ask you to do that is very similar to that RD consult or OT consult that I showed earlier. We can do that here as well. And so the nephrologists themselves can, you know, click body composition measurement, please. And when they sign that, that will flow to your multi-patient task list. And so you use that Fresenius Kabi fluid program right now, right?
Yes.
So what my understanding from Teresa's email is that it generates a report. You file that as part of the patient chart, the paper chart. It's okay to be sort of there for record keeping and for batch scanning later. But what do you need to document in your notes in the moment about that body composition measurement?
So we usually document the overhydration, which is in liters. That's the main number that the physicians will look at. And also we note when the body composition monitor was done, so whether it was done pre-dialysis or after dialysis. That way, based on the overhydration number, then the physician can decide whether or not their goal weights need to be adjusted.
Okay. And I saw the run logs that you shared with Teresa. You just kind of write it in OH and then the volume.
So that's the way we do it for in-center hemo, but in home hemodialysis, our nurses can actually do it themselves too. So I wonder if there's a more accessible place to put it in.
Okay, so it's something that both dietitians and nurses can document on.
Yes, Alberto, feel free to say something if it's not what you guys are doing.
Okay. Has this come up, Maritza or Flo, about documentation of overhydration? Is that in any of your dialysis management fields?
I'd have to take a deeper dive, but it hasn't come up in any of our other renal sessions.
Okay. So sorry, Jarek, you mentioned it could be pre or post?
That's right. So if it's done pre, and let's say the patient is 50 kilos and the overhydration that was derived pre-dialysis was plus 2 liters, then that means maybe their goal weight needs to be adjusted down 2 liters to accommodate that. So it would be helpful to note when the procedure was done, so you kind of have a reference weight to base that off of.
Okay, okay. So what I have pulled up here is an IV band that the hemo nurses will be using to document a lot of things. And I pulled up a section called pre-hemodialysis. So they have different fields, vital signs, everything in these sections, whether they're assessing pre, intra, or post dialysis. And one of them is pre-dialysis measurements. So I'm wondering if, I mean, I see a pre-HD weight here, but you need a place, and the nurses need a place to document overhydration.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Okay, okay. And so this is done for home hemo patients as well as conventional HD?
That's right. I think it's also possible to do it on PD patients, but it's not done very often.
Right, yeah, okay. Okay, you know, let me look into this a bit further with my renal colleagues, but what it sounds like is that you and nursing need a field to document overhydration, and this field needs to be seen and sort of viewable for review by the nephrologist because they might adjust their goal weight on that.
Right.
Okay. Something that's kind of cool with these flow sheet like documentation too is when you put in a field, so say their pre HD weight was 70, and I sign it, it knows that, okay, this was taken on April 20th. So it kind of covers you both in the sense that you can chart your thing, but also have the date attached to it. Date and time, I should say. Okay, so pre and then post, we'll look at if there's an overhydration field that we can, where that would fit in for you.
Great, yeah, because this is important for in-center sometimes, depending on what time the patient comes. Sometimes we can try to do it before dialysis, but sometimes they might have to be done after.
Okay, okay. Yeah, and Jarek, I'm happy to send sort of the work we did in the crosswalk for you if you're interested, but everything is kind of captured in here in the iView section in the band, and then you document it, and it would, recognizing that it's in a flow sheet like way, it's not super readable, but you would make a new note in DyingDoc and it would actually pull in all those fields. I didn't chart anything, so unfortunately it's not pulling anything in, but it pulls it all into the ADIME format that our PPLs are moving towards, of this international terminology and international format of nutrition documentation.
Sounds good.
Okay, and then for pharmacy, I'm sorry, that doesn't fall under my portfolio, so I don't know what your PPLs have kind of decided for pharmacy documentation. But my understanding is that Kevin, for you to get your consults, it would be the same through multi-patient task list. They are flexing the pharmacy consult order on for you so that you can keep track of your caseload.
Sounds good.
Okay. Any questions from Allied Health? Okay, I have a couple follow-up items here. So the first one is to look at the workflow of how multiple clinicians might divide up their caseload in one location. So it sounds like there's sort of 4 dietitians in one area. So I'll put together a demo and a sample for the session next week, and Jerick, I'll have them share it with you as well, just to make sure that it works for you from your perspective.
I did have a quick question, Kathy, about signing documentation. Like if we have students, is there a way to co-sign?
Yes, good question. Yeah, so students, especially dietitian students, will be provisioned their own position where they do require co-signature. I don't want to demo it for you now because it does take a little bit of time, but anything that they chart, so whether it's an iView or in a note like this, will require their a dietitian to co-sign. So as the preceptor or as a supervising dietitian, I can then review what my student has signed. Anything that doesn't look right, it's not committed to the chart. I have to send it back to the student for review. Anything that looks okay, I sign off on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, really good question. Other follow-up items is that social workers will work on a home hemo pre-assessment that they will share with Stephanie, and we'll try to make sure that's captured in the electronic chart so that all your documentation's in one place. And then we will look into overhydration documentation for dietitians and nursing, both pre-run and post-run. Did I get those follow-up items correct? Did I miss anything?
Kathy, it's Irvin. I just want to touch on one thing about the overhydration DTA that Jerick was mentioning. There was a previous meeting. I am not sure, but there was an email from as a result from that meeting that it was a home hemo session as well. I'm not sure which dietitian was in attendance, and someone confirmed that they don't use the BCM paper form and just document a note in the chart. So I just want to touch on that and just confirm that that's the case, or is this overhydration DTA really required? Because just conflicting answers from that meeting and today's meeting. Just for anyone on the call.
Sorry, can I just clarify? Are you asking about the overhydration value or the paper form or printout that comes with the fluid management program?
I'm not too sure which form that. Well, I only know it's called the body composition monitoring form, paper form. And that was a form that was presented and determined from that session that it was not really used and that the dietitians just create a note in the chart.
Yeah,
Is that
so we do typically just focus on the overhydration. So I did wonder whether it would be best to have it as a free text note or have it as a line that any other profession can fill in. So I'm not sure what would work better because sometimes for home hemo, a nurse can do the BCM. But in terms of the paper report that comes with the fluid management program, I think it's very nephrologist specific too. Some of our nephrologists, I think, look at the report and some of them don't, and they just look at the overhydration value.
okay? So there's a chance that they would refer to somewhere in this screen right here and not through the note, is what you're saying?
Irvin, I think Drake is saying is that part of this overhydration assessment, there's sort of 2 outputs. One is a paper form that the program spits out. And I think that is maybe what's not needed in Cerner. But the other output is the numeric value of this patient's overhydration.
Okay.
Did I get that right, Jerry?
Yeah.
Can I show the form just so we're all on the same page?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I'll try and make this quick just while we have everyone on the call. So this was the form.
Oh, we don't really use this form. I haven't
Okay,
seen one
I
in a
guess,
while.
okay, I guess this was the form that was presented and it was determined it wasn't really needed. But you're saying now that the overhydration field that you had mentioned earlier is what you think you would need to chart on?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when we do the body composition monitoring, we do input things like weight, height, blood pressure, those things that were kind of on the form that you were showing earlier.
Okay.
But it doesn't necessarily need to be documented. I think the most important piece of information that the doctors and other professions are looking at is the overhydration.
Okay. So right now there is currently a DTA, absolute overhydration. Will that be the same thing? And there's another one too down here. One is in liters, one is a percentage.
We usually document it in liters, so it would probably be
It will be the first one, hey?
Yeah.
Right now, this DTA is only available for pediatrics, so BC Children's. And it's currently built within the PEDS dialysis management band here, which is where nurses usually would chart. If this was something that you feel that you need, where it would likely possibly be in a nutrition band where dietitians would be documenting on and not PEDS dialysis management band, but I'm not too sure yet at this point. But the DTA is there. It's just not available for adults because it wasn't a requirement at that point in time when it was first presented. So I think, remind me again where you wanted this, if anything, if it was to be placed in this band.
I think it was important to note when it was done in terms of the dialysis treatment, if it was done pre-dialysis or post-dialysis, because then the weight that you're going with is going to be different.
Okay, so
Irvin, did that ever come up for children's? Because if they just have one value, but sort of no ability to say when they did that body comp measurement.
So I guess I wasn't there historically to the story of this DTA. All I know is that it does exist for this BCM section here for PEDS. Yeah, not entirely sure about the decision for that one.
And Alberto, this is something that nurses would chart on.
For home hemo, yes. Hemodialysis, like the other side, no, they don't do it.
For home hemo, nurses chart. You said nurses will chart on this.
Oh, well, in Cerner-wise, I don't know, but nurses do BCMs here in home hemo, and then we would chart in Promise.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, it was mentioned during that meeting that they don't the BCM here, nobody charts on this. That's why it's not available for VGH at this point. So
I'm guessing that's right during the hemodialysis section, right?
Well, it's all in the dialysis management band. But you're right, in the hemodialysis grouping. Yeah.
So Irvin, it sounds like we might need to add this body comp monitoring section to the adult band then.
Yes, if it's being used the same way that children's is using it. I'm not too sure how to navigate or what Tariq was saying about needing to know the time. I wonder if like potentially if putting this subsection as well, making it available for a VGH is enough. So it really looks like this, but for adults, it's sufficient to meet VGH requirements. What do you
Well,
think?
I think we need to also ask the nephrologist, because if they are the ones reviewing this information and then changing the goal weight based on it, that's pretty huge. So
Is this
So
DT?
not-
I guess this value won't be found anywhere else, hey? Not in the prescription, not in the M page, just here in IV?
I think they just need to see it. So whether it's through like through the dialysis M page where they see, you know, pre-run, intra-run, post-run, so that they know where this value is coming from.
Okay. If the ticket did say the same location here, same sequence, and same DTAs, would that be enough to like send it for an EDD?
Sorry, what do you mean same location?
So like if we added this body composition monitoring section, made it available for adults, where it is right now, is that sufficient in terms of where it's going to be placed?
I don't think so, because then Jerry can't indicate whether she did the measurement pre-dialysis or post-dialysis.
Okay.
Does that make
Unless
sense?
there
'Cause-
was a way to add a line onto the body composition monitoring section to say whether, like a drop down or something to say that you did it pre or post.
That's that, or you were saying put one in pre-hemodialysis and put one in post?
Yeah, so I think either way, you would still need possibly a new DTA build.
Okay, I'll talk to Vivi. And the time, obviously the time for the pre and the post is different. So it won't be a problem if it has a shared DTA with different times.
Sorry, quick thing to add on. I mean, Drake, can we just add it on as a whole different band then? It doesn't have to be under pre or post. It can just be under, let's say, under peritoneal dialysis catheter. It can just be a whole band underneath on top under that. It doesn't have to be within pre or
The
post.
way it's showing right now, it's its own separate bin. I think that's okay. It just needs within that, it needs to be, we need to be able to indicate whether it was done pre or post. So if there is a possibility to add like another way to input that within that section, then that would be helpful.
Yeah, so I think Jerry just saying to add another DTA there, and then you can, I guess, maybe drop down, pick between pre and post.
Okay, and
within the same band here, right? Or what's this in the same section?
Also allowing to enter the value, right?
Yes, correct. So
In
I guess.
liters. Okay.
Oh, not in liters. I guess she was saying that it would be a whole new DTA saying when was this BCM collected, and then the actual value would be, I guess you can put a drop down pre, post, or other, something like that.
Okay. All right.
Right, Drake?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take this away. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Just being mindful of time, I do want to transition over to Jesse to do a reports demo. For our allied health colleagues, if there are any questions, you can send them my way, and I could always just relay it to Kathy. I hope that was helpful to go through that content. So Jesse, if you're able to share your screen, we can dive into reports.
Thank you, Maritza. I will share my screen now. So you guys just let me know when you can see it. So yeah, my name is Jesse Spicer. I'm a clinical informatics specialist with PHC. So I'll just be going over some reports. So can you guys see the slide that just says reports? Wonderful. So I think this might be the first time that you guys are actually seeing any reports in the Discern reporting portal. So I'll kind of just do like a brief introduction. I guess one of the kind of significant advantages from documenting in a system like Cerner is the ability to utilize the data and generate reports like this. And there are hundreds, if not thousands of reports built into the system. A lot of them are used across specialties, but there are also some custom reports that have been designed specifically for the renal space. So for example, this first one here, hemodialysis run log, that's a very specific report designed for renal, whereas something like patients with clinic flags, It can be used with any clinic flag throughout the hospital and different clinics, etc. So I'm basically just going to jump right into the system and show you guys how to kind of search up a report, how to run it, and we'll be focusing on a few of these reports here. I won't spend too long on each one, just in the interest of time. I just kind of wanted to give an introduction so you guys can kind of see the layout of the reports, how it works to actually run one, etc. So I'm going to dive right in. So this application here is the Discern Reporting Portal. You can access it pretty easy from PowerChart. So on the toolbar, there's this Discern Reporting Portal button. You can click it and it'll load it up. You load it up to save time. So on this main dashboard, you can see on the left-hand side, there's basically a few different filters here. You can see recent reports. So these are reports you've looked at, recently. And then on the main tabs here, basically lists all the reports. So you guys won't see this many reports. This is like over 3,000 reports. This is just because I'm using a special position in the back end. It's kind of a combination of all positions. So I can just see every report that's in the system. But each report will usually be designated like a certain position. So for example, one report might be able to be used by clerks. Other reports could be used by nurses and pharmacists, etc. So there's certain kind of positions tied to each report. And so that'll kind of determine when you log in with your position, you'll see a list of reports that are available to you. So it'll kind of differ depending on who's actually logging in. A few other things I want to mention too is this favoriting feature. So you'll see on the right-hand side, there's these stars. So there's actually this other tab. So if you want to look up a report, you could just favorite it, and then you'll just have like a list of reports saved here that you can refer back to easily in the future. So the first report I want to look at is the hemodialysis run log. So you can just use this search field here, and you can start typing it out, and it'll kind of narrow down the reports that you have access to. You'll see my favorites. It's still showing just because I've already favorited this one. I'll just click on it. And now here are a few things. Move this little participants thing. Click this. So a few things here. The description field is helpful. It'll kind of describe what the report actually is. And then there's a few other fields here that aren't as helpful, but then there's the run button here. So this allows you to actually run the report. So basically this hemodialysis run log report, it just shows all the data relevant to specific runs for a patient that's doing HD, and it kind of separates it onto each run. So I'll kind of show you how that looks. So this window that pops up after you click run is the kind of search prompt. So it allows you to enter in different information to actually kind of narrow down the results of the report. So we're going to do it by patient here. So I'm just going to search up a test patient that we have in the system. That's okay. This report crosses encounters. So for each patient you look up, you don't actually have to select an encounter. It's just going to kind of show all of the different HD runs they've done in this specific date range. So here we have a start and end date. I'm just going to pick out some dates that I know have few runs for this test patient. I think it was back in November. So you can pick kind of any range. I'm just going to do like about a month long range. I think there's only 2 runs that this patient had here. So once you select your date range, you just click this execute button. And it'll load for a little bit just to generate the data. But you'll see here, it shows this output here. So on the top, you see kind of some of your patient information. It shows you the actual date that the run sheet is for. So this patient had a hemodialysis run on November 1st. So it kind of shows you some of the information relating to this run, which machine it was using. And now is kind of the meat of the report down here. So it's kind of structured into these different components. So this top one, dialysis prescription, all of these fields, this is just pulling entries from that dialysis prescription power form that we looked at earlier in this session. So it essentially is just pulling in all the data points that were documented in that power form, and it would show the most recent prescription power form that was documented by the time the patient has done this run. Because obviously, as you guys saw, there's, that power form can be updated over time as some of these data points change. So this is just showing the instance of that HD prescription power form as of November 1st, 2021. And then as you look below, all of this information is pulled from iView. So Maritza was showing that earlier when she was looking at the dialysis management band in iView. So essentially, these are just data points that were documented in iView from the various sections. So there's the pre-HD measurements, post-HD, etc. So all that information is shown here as well. And each of these actual run sheets has 2 pages. So if you can just go to the next page, it'll show you the rest of the information. So there's just some access related information. And then there's this session log portion that just kind of shows the actual data points and shows the actual time they were documented. Usually they wouldn't be documented that close together, but it'll kind of show you everything that was documented. And then finally, medications administered. So it shows you any medications that were essentially administered during this HD run. So that's all the information that's showed for each run. I can go to next pages and you'll see that this test patient had their next dialysis run on November 9th. So it just shows all that same information from November 9th. Now, of course, in reality, patients will have their hemodialysis, more than twice in a month. So there'd be a lot of instances of this that would show. Any questions about this report so far, just the layout or anything we've seen so far? Okay, pretty straightforward. So I'll X out of that report. The next one I want to show is the clinic flag report. So I'll just go to my favorites because I've already favorited it here. So it's this report here, patients with clinic flags. So this one is a little bit more simple. Literally with this prompt, the only thing you actually have to do is look up the clinic flag. So I'm going to pick one of our dialysis clinic flags. So I'll just go PHC renal hemodialysis. So this would be for live. So I'll press execute. Now, this report is actually structured in a slightly different way. It's basically modeled after kind of like a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, and there's a variety of filters up top. And you can actually export this one pretty quickly into an Excel spreadsheet too, which can be pretty handy. So essentially this is showing a list of all the patients in our test domain that have this PHC renal hemodialysis clinic flag. And it kind of breaks them down, and so it shows their name, some other demographic information, and you can manipulate the data in a few ways. So for example, if I want to organize like the flag added date, I can just click that and it'll show me, from, I guess, looking back in the past and then going into the future, and it kind of will stratify it that way. You can also type in values into the filter. So for example, if I want to find a specific patient, I can just type in their last name and it'll narrow it down and I can find them there. So yeah, it's kind of a nice user-friendly report, nice and simple how it's set up. And again, it's pretty straightforward in terms of what data is showing. So that's pretty much it for the clinic flag report. So I'm just going to jump back now into our slide deck. So just in the interest of time for the rest of the reports, I'm not going to actually run each one. I just wanted to kind of give an impression on how to actually run that report. So a few others, ones that are worth calling out. So this renal MedAdmin report. So this report is designed to capture administration events of IV iron in this case. I've selected it up here in the prompt to obtain the supply from outpatient pharmacy. So essentially you just put in IV iron, I'll pick, which patient population I want, and then you'd go down, find the actual location for the SPH renal hemodialysis unit. Of course, down the road, you guys will use the VGH home hemo, that'll have its own location. And then again, you can do a date range as well. And then once you run this report, it essentially, again, kind of shows that spreadsheet type style, except this one isn't as interactive. You can't really manipulate the filters as well, but you can easily just copy paste this and put it into an Excel spreadsheet. So it'll show the actual title of the medication, and then it just shows some information like the actual different order information that ordered entered. It'll show, the ordering position, etc. And then it'll show some other useful information like what power plan this order belongs to, attending provider, etc. So a pretty straightforward report that can be run pretty easily.
Sorry, Jessica, can you just go back to your slide with the filter prompts? I think the one prior to this one.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think what you had showed was just the CSV output type of the report. I think what you have on the screenshot, it's selected as report. So it actually can be generated in a more user-friendly, easier collection of the data. So it's not very Excel-y, but just know that you have the option of selecting both.
Yes, that's a good point. I should definitely mention that. Personally, I prefer this like spreadsheet style, but that's just because when I run reports, I like to just literally copy all of it and just paste it into an Excel spreadsheet because it's just easier to work with Excel for me. But yes, absolutely. So you can also run them in this kind of report format, and that'll just make it a bit more user-friendly within the actual report itself. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Maritza. So moving on to the scheduling report. So here, I'm not going to spend too much time. And just curious, actually, do we have a clerk still on the line currently? If we don't, it might not be worth even looking at these. Vic, are you on the line?
No, I don't see Esther and or Vic. I think they may have dropped off already.
Okay, I think then in the interest of time, because Marissa, you still have a few things to go over, and we can probably skip over this. Basically, there's a variety of scheduling reports that can be used as well, but we're going to be having an additional scheduling session that Heather's going to be doing, and she's going to be actually showing these reports in more detail and actually diving into each one, kind of explaining them and going over all the different functionality that they have. So I think for the purpose of this session, we can just kind of skip through this. Would you agree, Maritza?
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So that's pretty much it for the reports. Any questions about any of those reports we've looked at so far? Okay, great. If there are no questions, we can move on. I know there's a few more items on the agenda, and we only have about 10 minutes, so I'll pass it back to you, Maritza.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to bring up my PowerPoint slide deck again. Can you guys see okay? Or let me just hold on. Sorry. Can you see my PowerPoint? Okay, perfect. Thank you. We were just doing a deeper dive of the different forms that you have in use in your clinic. So I did notice there was a fact cover sheet. Is this currently used consistently?
Yes, we use it.
Okay, so I think what we will need to do is have it uploaded to our Forms Fast application, so you could have it easily accessible to be printed off Cerner, or you can access it locally how you do now. So there is that option for you guys to decide. And then this form here, I may need some clarification, but from our understanding, it looks like it's a form pertaining to recombinant and like vaccinations and so forth. And if it was administered, that the IDC would need to be aware of this. So I just wanted some clarification if I got that correct or not.
Yeah, so just to clarify, I guess when Recomvax is given is in a series. So if we look at the HD side, because the patient's there like 3 times a week, it's this actual HD unit that's giving them this vaccination. So when it comes to the home hemo patients, in occasion where patient, let's say, lives let's say out of the lower mainland or does not have to come here for these vaccinations, we send it to their local public health for them to give it.
Okay, so we probably make the recommendation to also have this form uploaded for easy printing through the Forms Fast, so you can access it easily.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And then the next few.
Oh, sorry, this is Amy. I just want a question. Like, if patients have it done in the GP, what's gonna happen? Sometimes sometimes a patient, they go to see the family doctor regularly, and then the family doctor follow up and give them a vaccination, or what's gonna happen then?
Well, I guess, I mean, this is a VGH form. I don't know what if you guys have anything like this. What do you guys do right now? Because this is what we do for our VGH.
Usually I just enter into on my chart, just written down like family doctor follow up or whatever. Like but
Okay.
I'm not quite sure what you guys doing. Like,
So that form on the right there, we actually send it to, for example, patients all the way in Yukon. We actually send it to their public health clinic or the doctor. So then can you do the recombinant for us, or not really for us, for the patient? Because we might have started a series here, but then it's not like they can just abruptly stop it and be coming all the way down here just for continue the series.
Exactly.
So we do send it to, let's say, either the GP or the public health to continue doing the series for us.
Okay, but for mind a lot. Like
Yeah, no need
actually,
to-
I just tell them to go to the family doctor, and
Yeah,
then they,
so no
usually
need to
they
change.
just had the result, give them the result, and say, oh, this is low, and they will give a dose. And yeah.
So fair enough.
Is
I think
there-
from your guys' point, you guys continue what you're doing. As for us, same thing. That's Maritza says. We'll just keep this on paper. That's so that way BGH can just print it out and use it again.
Yeah, the other thing is there is a vaccination power plan that would carry forward from when the patient's in, getting conventional HD and if they transition to home hemo. So if you are sending this off and the patient gets a vaccine in the community, or if they're like out of province and you're receiving this information, there is within the power plan and orders comment section to just update like the next like timing for the next series of whatever vaccine the patient is on. So just
Like,
as an FYI.
Like, I guess, are you like, let's say that does happen. So a VGH patient, so in-center patient has a series, they go through us, and then let's say they go out of the lower mainland, but they're not finished the series. Will Cerner like have like a flag saying like, oh, this patient did not finish their series for any reason?
No, not
Okay, perfect. As long
unfortunately
as it doesn't
not.
bug me, then should be good.
Yeah, yeah. Lastly, there were a lot of BC Renal as well as Baxter forms. So our recommendation for these specific forms, I have here one for consent, and I have some other ones related to patient travel. Our recommendation is to access it the way that you currently access it. So if it's through their website or if you have it available somewhere else, it's really challenging to maintain version control if it's available in Cerner through FormsFast. So our recommendation is to kind of steer away from that. So just access it the way that you do now.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And I wanted just to ask a question whether there was a pre-dialysis checklist form that you guys use in home hemo. It kind of came up in our gap analysis when we were reviewing, but I couldn't find it in our list of received documents.
And I guess, do you have anything equivalent to what you mean by the checklist from the HC side?
I don't necessarily, so I thought I'd just check to see if you use a checklist to help support your work in home hemo.
If all I can think of, if you're comparing this to what hemo does, they do have this green chart, this green page that goes over all the stuff a new patient will go through. It's not an official form. That's my
Okay.
thinking. But if this is just like only one pre-dialysis, like one checklist for pre-run, then it will be on the front page of their HC log sheet, which kind of just asks them, okay, headache, blood pressure is high or not, diarrhea, nausea. That would be my thinking, which we do have already in our current log sheet.
Okay.
I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, I just wanted just to see if there was anything specific that we missed. I'll take a look through the hemodialysis forms again, but we could probably leverage some existing power forms or build in Cerner to help if you need a checklist. Yeah. Lastly, I really wanted to touch upon downtime and promise. So in case this wasn't communicated in our previous sessions, there will be these 7/24 downtime access to your computer. So in case Cerner is not accessible for whatever reason, prescription information as well as documentation is all accessible through this one computer that's designated as your 7/24. There will be this kind of sticker that will be like, stuck on that computer. And in particular regards to your HD prescription, it's available in the system, in that downtime access computer system for up to 2 years. So I'm not sure if there is some sort of physical box where you house all of your paper documentation, but that's something that if it's not already in operation needs to be set up just so that you have accessibility to paper forms that you use in your clinic in the event that there is some sort of downtime.
And I'm guessing they also designate this one computer to be the clerk's computer, right?
Usually it is the clerk's computer, yeah. Lastly, I did briefly mention the use of promise, so that likely won't go away. There's a lot of information that you enter into promise that helps support funding for your program, et cetera. So just wanted to call out that you will continue to manually enter information into promise, such as registration, waitlist information, medications, core data elements, the prescription, transonic results, and dialysis statuses. What we don't need to enter into promise is related to scheduling. There is an interface that is set up. So at the time of scheduling appointments, that will communicate with the promise database. And there is also a clinic scheduling extract and some clinic notes that don't need to go into promise, but just wanted to bring it up. So in case there were any questions about the use of promise and Cerner, documentation in both will have to continue in the future state.
Maritza, do you mind if I quickly jump in to ask a question? I know Esther isn't here, but Alberto, I'm wondering if you can tell me what is currently scheduled into promise. When it comes to the different appointment types, does Esther always enter HD conventional or HD conventional training? And then the short daily versus short daily training?
I'm not too sure about
You're not
that.
sure. Okay.
I would think she does, but I'm not too sure exactly.
Okay.
She's away this whole
Sorry.
week too, so.
I will get in touch with Esther. I just heard she was off sick this week, so I'll wait for her to return. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And very briefly, just wanted to highlight our next steps. So we do have an order sets design session on May 3rd. Carrie mentioned that already, so the providers will be there to discuss power plan build for the home hemo. We do have an upcoming scheduling validation session booked for May 4th, and then our validation session is scheduled for May 11th. And we do have a number of action items that we will follow up with and have updates for this group come our validation session in a few weeks. So again, just want to say thank you. I know our numbers have dwindled as the meeting has progressed on, but thank you again for every input and information you have provided. Just want to ask if there are any last minute questions before we end the session.
This is Amy. I'm the home hemo nurse. I just want to ask for the 3 days, do all for the home hemo nurse has to attend it, or what's our schedule, because I have training coming up, so I don't not sure that I'll be available for the all 3 days.
The order set one, it's more for the providers. I'm not sure if you qualify for that or not.
So for the nurses, we don't need to really attend it.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but the scheduling and validation, I would highly recommend that you are present if you can.
The scheduling one only? Okay, so
both the scheduling.
May the 4th that the nurses has to be attending that one.
Yeah, that's the one that Heather is going to conduct. It's just to validate the scheduling build.
Okay,
and then,
that's Wednesday. Okay.
Yeah, but definitely be here for the validation session on May 11th.
So the May of 11 one that we need to attending that one. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So that today. Okay.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you again for everything, everyone. We'll catch you guys next time. Thank you.